All right, welcome everyone to the regular town council meeting of the Mount Crescent View Town Council. Calling the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. Tiffany, roll call, please.
Steve,
Here.
Alex,
Brett.
Roman,
Here.
Janet, here, Dwayne,
Yeah.
Mayor Kempin,
Yes.
Michael Bacani is absent.
Next item is approval of the agenda. I actually have a couple of items, but does anybody else have any changes to the agenda tonight? Okay, the couple of things that I have that need to be added to the agenda, and I think we'll add them at the end. The first one is a homestead contract extension. The second one is a proclamation, a mental health awareness proclamation. And then the third one is a request from STORE for funding for additional law enforcement officers. So those three items, if there's no objection, I would like to add to the agenda in, we'll make it 10.4, or we'll do it after prospect. How's that?
Can I, if you can let me elaborate on the homestead item,
Please.
if you don't mind, what I will need, the council previously approved allowing the extension of the date for closing. But what I will need tonight more accurately is or with more detail is the option agreement and the collateral assignment consent. And I can explain those when we get there, but those are the two things that I need to explain and get the council's action on. So homestead contract matters is probably good enough.
Sorry, say that again, Jerry.
Just let's call it homestead contract matters. And
Okay.
I can elaborate when we get there.
Okay, so I move to add to our agenda tonight the following three separate items. The first one is homestead contract matters. The second one is a mental health awareness proclamation, and the third one is a funding request from STORE, and I further move that we hear those items after the prospect public hearing and discussion, but before resolution number 6, 2024. So, all right, motion from me, second from Dwayne to add those three items to the agenda. Any further discussion? Tiffany?
Janet. Yes. Dwayne,
Yes.
Roman,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Steve,
Yep.
Mayor Kempin.
Yes. Next item is public comment. Citizens may make comments on items not scheduled on the agenda. Per Colorado open meetings law, no council discussion or action will take place until a later date if necessary. You must sign in with the town clerk before speaking. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone here in the audience for public comment?
Ian.
Here for North Village, second reading.
Jerry, do we have public comment scheduled for North Village second reading?
Yes, we can take public comment on North Village when we get to that item.
Thank you.
I can
Yeah.
make it now.
No, let's keep it in its proper spot. So public comment for items not scheduled on the agenda. Anyone else here in person? What about online via Zoom? Anyone for general public comment? Make yourself known. Okay, hearing none. Next item is approval of the April 16th, 2023 regular town council meeting minutes.
Move the approval of the April 16th town council meeting minutes.
We have a motion from Janet and a second from Dwayne to approve April 16th, 2023 regular town council meetings. Any further discussion? Tiffany?
Dwayne,
Yes.
Roman,
Abstain?
Alec,
Yes.
Janet, Steve,
Yep.
Mayor Kimpin.
Yes. Next is correspondent. We have a monthly report from Waste Management in there. And then Tiffany, I know we have correspondence for public comment for agenda items that are coming up, but as far as general correspondence, is there anything else?
There's one that I handed out. It was an email from Bill Moose about
Yes,
First Tracks.
yes, thank you for that. And I did see that. Okay, first item of business then is the Hunter Hill Road and Cinnamon Mountain Road Rehabilitation Bid Award. Jeff. Hi, Jeff.
Hello. Hello all. Okay, this is a project that went out to bid. And we received bids April 10th, and the town did receive one bid on this project, which is the reconstruction of about 2,600 linear feet of both Cinnamon Mountain Road and Hunter Hill Road, which are in very poor condition. So, the SGN provided design plans for that submittal. And again, the town received one bid proposal, and that was from Dietrich Dirt Works. And so the town is in front of you tonight to seek approval to award that bid to Dietrich and then enter into contract negotiations with Dietrich. So I'll just say this is one of the larger roadway projects in front of the town this year. It's an expensive project as a result, because it's not only paving, but there's a fair amount of drainage work. There's going to be up on Cinnamon Mountain Road, if you can picture the cul-de-sac up there, that will need to be modified and expanded a little bit to meet fire district turnaround code. So it's not, there's more to it than just a paving project. So the bid that was received from Dietrich was $1,155,829. And the other comment to make tonight is that based on town funding for this year and other projects that are in the works, it is conceivable that maybe one of those segments of the road projects, either Hunter Hill or Cinnamon, might be or need to be completed as a 2025 project.
But this bid still covers both, even if they're split in time.
It does, and that's a good question. And the town will work with Dietrich to continue to try to secure both proposal bids in the event that one has to go to 2025.
Is it unusual to have just one bid?
We were surprised. I've reached out to some others that we were expecting bids on, and we were hoping for more, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that will happen. One thing that we did do is we compared the Dietrich bid amount to what our engineer had estimated as a probable cost for this project. And that Dietrich versus SGN cost estimate was in 12% of the cost. Dietrich was 12% higher. Typically, if it's in 15%, then there's a comfort level there that the bid was submitted per design.
A quick question about splitting the project. Overall, it's 12% over. Cinnamon was only 5% over and Hunter was 20%. If they're then, so is that acceptable within an overall bid, or if they're split and Dietrich says, well, we have to rebid it next year, we're only gonna be able to do Hunter Hill, but it's 20% over, is that a cause for concern, or do we look at it again?
Well, that's a good question. And so the town is going to start negotiating with both SGM with Dietrich to maybe add some value to that Hunter Hill project that wasn't necessarily in the bid proposal design. And specifically, part of that would be to try to extend the walkway or a new walkway or pathway between the bus stop at Hunter Hill, right after you turn off the Gothic, up to the intersection of Snowmass, or basically up to West Wall. So the town's gonna be working to squeeze out as many of those dollars on Hunter Hill because of that.
So is it sort of like adding on lesser expensive things to make the overall project pencil at a lesser percentage? Like what we're trying to do some more expensive things just over here, but if we add some less expensive things over here, it'll more smoothed out. I'm just trying to understand that, or just simply ask them, can you tack on a sidewalk and make, you know, the project pencil?
Yeah, there's a little bit of both of those, and if one of the projects doesn't move forward, there maybe be some consideration for mobilization costs that were considered as part of the whole bid that we can use for Hunter Hill. So it's kind of the back to the valued engineering to we'll continue to maximize as much of project or projects as we can.
Thanks.
Any questions? Hearing none?
Move to approve the rehabilitation bid from Hunter Hill Road and Cinnamon Mountain Road to Dietrich Engineering.
Second.
Motion from Janet and a second from Alec to approve the bid for work on Hunter Hill Road and Cinnamon Mountain Road. Said bid award to Dietrich Dirtworks. Any further discussion? And just so we're clear, we're approving the bid. The contract is yet to be negotiated.
Right, so if you approve it, we'll submit the award letter to Dietrich, and that will allow us to enter into negotiations with Dietrich.
Okay.
Contract negotiation.
All right, does anybody have anything else? Tiffany?
Roman,
Yes?
Janet,
Yes.
Dwayne,
Yeah.
Alec,
Yes.
Steve.
Yep.
Mayor Kimpin.
Yes. All right, next item, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Next item is ordinance number 5, series 2024, an ordinance of the town council of the town of Mount Crested View, Colorado, approving a planned unit development major alteration for the village at Mount Crested View with conditions, and in connection therewith, approving an extended vesting period for the same, second reading. It looks like we have TJ. Hi, TJ.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. You guys are doing well. And you can hear me okay? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yep, thank you, Mayor. So as you mentioned, we have the ordinance 5 series 2024 on second reading. By way for some background, the final development plan and the lot line adjustment applications were considered by the council at their April 16th meeting, and the ordinance was approved on first reading, and the lot line adjustment was approved with conditions at that evening as well. Tonight is the second reading. The staff report should be viewed as an addendum to the staff reports previously presented to the council. And all background and analysis would be therefore kind of incorporated within, but we're just going to be talking about the changes or amendments made since the last presentation. So based on discussion at the last council meeting on April 16th, the applicant and town staff have discussed proposed amendments to the ordinance related to 2 items. You might recall, we talked about the Mount Crested Butte Water and Sand District written approval. And we received some updated correspondence from the district with respect to the language that they wanted in the condition tied to trigger points as opposed to building permits and things like that we were working through. So that updated language was presented and discussed with the applicant and agreed upon and should be reflected in the ordinance that you all have. The second is a new condition number 5 related to ensuring that the trail network will be completed as proposed. And this one, there's a little bit of kind of maybe some updates that we might be wanting to talk about. But at last meeting, you might remember there were concerns brought up about the trail construction, that the trail construction would not be realized, nor would they be maintained in perpetuity, and who was going to be doing that, and how would that all happen. Since Exhibit L in your packet, which is sheet L1.1.04, was updated to include two tables, which were part of the trails plan submitted and approved through the preliminary plan process. And so we worked with the applicant and staff to get those two tables into that updated sheet, that sheet being recorded with the the final development plan, which I believe maybe Neil, were you able to hand that out to the council members?
Was able, they have been provided the preliminary rails from the previously approved preliminary plan.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, that with that, we have reviewed that plan, those tables, and are in agreement that it meets or exceeds the current town standards. And therefore, we would incorporate that document into the condition number 5 that was added to the ordinance. So since it was some last minute, we were talking even earlier this week, I'll kind of defer to Jerry a little bit on that, or counsel through the conversation, but we may need to reword that ordinance 5 just a little bit, but all in all, the intent is still there, that L sheet L.1.04 is we feel meeting a lot of what was discussed last meeting related to design standards and maintenance. And then lastly, in the staff memo, you saw a component about related to updates to the PUD guide and the design guidelines. The applicant has made some minor changes to the PUD guide and the design guidelines, specifically on pages 37 and 15 respectively, that have to do with the development program summary, and those are just clarifying or more closely aligning with the approved lot line adjustment. And so if there are some specific questions on that, I would defer to Heather, who I see is online here, but that was the reason for those updates, and those were we tried to highlight those in your packet. So with all of that, staff continues to recommend approval of the ordinance on second reading with the conditions stipulated in the staff memo, and as outlined in the ordinance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all might have, or turn it on over to the applicant if desired.
Thanks, TJ.
I would like to add to TJ's report just briefly, if you don't mind. And he mentioned that this condition number 5 concerning the trails plan, we learned after last meeting that not only the concern at the last meeting was, okay, who's going to build these trails? Where are they going to be? Is there going to be a guarantee that they're going to exist? And who's going to build them and when? And we created a condition that you see in the regular packet that says it's individual track developers when that happens. But meanwhile, we looked and we were shown and found this L.1.04 that actually provides for trails to be built by the master developer, and a schedule and a listing of the trails and how they're maintained. For that reason, when we get to action mode, I'll be suggesting amendments to condition 5 that make that more clear, that it's this exhibit that controls that and is actually a better explanation or description of the obligation to build the trails and who builds them. Then we can use the language that's in condition 5, but I'll have notes to accomplish what I just described, which is our better understanding now of what actually was presented on preliminary. And so we can adjust for that. The other point I guess I'd make is that I think the motion in the packet right now still references first reading, and when you get around to reading the motion, I know whoever reads it will say second reading of the ordinance. That's a minor detail, and I'll watch for it. I think I cut poor Neil off when he was about to weigh in, so I'll shut up. But I wanted to, while we're talking about trails, I wanted to add to what TJ has said.
Well, I was just going to follow up on TJ and since Jerry chimed in there. Just for clarification, this came to light after the discussion with council on condition number 5 and who's building the trails, how will they be maintained. This is a considerable update from that conversation. If you look at that trail sequencing and maintenance matrix on the construction timing and who's responsible for the construction of those trails A, B, C, and part of L, I guess, so the urban sidewalks. It would be North Village Associates that would be responsible to construct those trails during phase 1. In addition, as a part of the use agreement or easement, you'll notice that Trail B, that is a recreation trail, it's a very significant trail through the middle of the development, identifies an easement. That's 2 asterisks that are identified in the lower portion of that matrix. It says the easement is to be located and dedicated at final plat. The assumption had been that the lot line adjustment is a representation of the final plat. We were unable to locate an easement for that Trail B, so maybe that's a question to the applicant, what the status of that is.
I have a question in the staff report that says, you know, item B under the updated materials, it says a new condition number 6. And y'all been referencing number 5 on the trails.
I think that's a typo.
Yeah.
DJ.
5.
Yep, that is correct in the title there. That's a typo. My apologies.
It makes a difference in the word, the motion.
Well, so we're at second reading, so there's sort of less structure to this one, but I think now would be a good time for you, Ian, to
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I think we're coming up on 4 years and thought it might be good to close with just a few statements. Speaking for RMBL, we just want to emphasize that we support the project. We're very grateful to the town as well as the developer. Rumble has a 100-year history out there. I think I'm coming up on 40 years personally myself. And so that property is uniquely positioned to address some of the impacts on our organization. I'm going to just make a few comments and make it super clear I'm speaking as an individual, because clearly I wear a lot of hats, and so it's going to be just simpler to just say this is Ian Billick speaking, and I'm not Rumble, not town, not anything else. I just want to express my personal opinion that density and development belongs in towns. You know, we're been involved, worked with Neil on the county's planning commission, been thinking about land use in this valley a long time. I'm very supportive of the Whetstone project. We're looking at spending 8 figures on water and wastewater, another 8 figures on integration with mass transit down there. Up here on this parcel in the town of Mount Crested Butte, you've got a water and wastewater system at about 25% capacity. There are a lot of benefits and a lot of reasons why land use planners will tell you you put density in town. So obviously it's not great sending a lot of traffic up the hill. If we could figure out how to move the town of Mount Crested Butte down below Crested Butte, we could probably get a lot of support for that, especially within the Rumble community, but
would be above, we put it above.
yeah, just to make sure we got that, know which way the poop flows, right? You know, my take is the town is here and we need to commit to making Mount Crested Butte sort of not just survive, but thrive. And so we've got a town, let's take advantage of it. Let's take care of that infrastructure. And there are a lot of efficiencies to be gained around that, which is not to say that it's easy. So you guys put in a lot of work and a lot of time because the devil's in the details and those things really matter. And I appreciate the work that you put into it. I will say, I personally believe, having watched a lot of projects, that we're very lucky to have Claudia and Yvonne Alvarez on this project, having worked with them for over 4 years. And just to keep this project in context, I think we are coming up on 4 years or over 4 years from first started. I might have the numbers wrong because I'm not certain I have enough fingers, but I think we're at 4 town managers and 4 or 5 town staff focusing on development for very good reasons. Like we initiated the application, I think, right as the COVID panic was coming out. And so that put a lot of stress on our institutions, and to nobody's fault has really delayed things. But I think Claudio and Yvonne really tried to do this the right way, going back to 2019 and before COVID. They put a lot of time into building a community alignment. They had a lot of meetings with the public to try to
30
figure out
seconds.
how to do this well. Thank you, Tiffany. I'm almost done. So I'm just really glad, and I think we're very fortunate that we've got them here, and I think they've done it the right way. I think the balance and reducing the density is a nice trade-off between putting too much density up here and putting development in town. So thanks for considering my feedback. Good luck. Thanks for the work you do.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, applicant, do you have anything that you'd like to?
Heather, I don't know if you want to go or I can go.
Go for it, Crockett.
From our standpoint, as Ian said, we really appreciate all the work that's going on. There's been a very large variety of people that we've worked with to get this far, and we really appreciate everybody's input. As far as we know this evening, I think the only couple of changes that were thrown out there were this modification of the trails language and a bit of an update on the water and sand requirements as you guys requested. So I think at this stage, as far as we're concerned, those are the last couple of items to talk about, and we're here to answer any questions you have about them.
Okay. All right, counselors, questions? And we'll just do questions for staff, questions for applicant. Let's just call it questions. Doesn't have to be directed.
In the proposed motion that's in the packet, and it says approving an extended vesting period for the same. That's kind of vague. I'm not sure what that means. I mean, I know what it's supposed to mean, but the vesting period was for a year.
Sure. Really, what it's doing is it's referring to the, when it's the same, that's really being quoted out of the title of the ordinance. You'll notice, so it would be an extended vested period for the Village of Mount Crested Butte. Then you go to the interior of the ordinance itself to find the extension, which, as I recall, is at section 2. So really that motion is just, it's referring to the title of the ordinance in sort of short form. But then you go to the ordinance, section 2, vested rights in the ordinance itself, and that details the 5-year vesting with the additional potential for a 5-year extension upon request.
Agree with that. Okay.
Yep.
Other questions?
Can we touch on the Trail B and point that Neil was bringing up relative to the easement?
Yeah.
Could you, and I think I understood it, but basically there's no documentation of an easement for that that town staff can locate?
The review of the lot line adjustment plat,
Okay.
could not find, and I'd ask the applicant, is there an easement for Trail B?
Well, this is the first I'm hearing of the discussion, so I didn't have time to look it up. I don't know if Heather has a better.
Yeah, I can speak to, so Trail B is the one that extends kind of around the reservoir. So there's a funny sequence. We did the trails, we had a utilities plan, we changed the utilities. They were potentially going to go through common area F. And so then we indicated that trail that goes around the reservoir would be in an easement. Then the utilities changed. We moved them out of F. They go back around the reservoir now. So in the plat, and this is something that the district asked for, there is the graphic that shows where the easements are located for utilities. So for our force main that comes out of the lift station and goes around the reservoir, et cetera. When we finalize, and this is why we're asking for that year to record our final plat, right? So if we make any final tweaks to the utilities, et cetera, we'll be able to tweak those easements. That trail, for the most part, is gonna be able to follow the alignment of those utilities for about 3/4 of it. And then we'll be able to place any final easements just for the trail, you know, as we finalize the final plat. So it's a funny sequence, but the intention is that particular one would be in an easement. And then primarily the other trails are all in the right of way anyway, so that it's irrelevant to put those in an easement.
So. Do we still have a problem with recording the plat or not?
Well, what we could do, I'm making notes on that. What we could do is address that in condition number 5, which we're gonna edit up a little bit anyhow. And I'm making a note that would say something along the lines, provided that the plat prior to recording of the plat, an easement for Trail B, is that what it is, Trail B?
Yes.
Yeah.
Be depicted on the plat as shown on the diagram. And that way, before they can record the plat, they will have had to go through the exercise that Heather just now described. And then we'll know where it is. And they can't record the plat until they show that that's on the plat. And I think that's a sufficient solution if Heather and.
Yep. Yeah, we're comfortable with that language being included in that condition 5, yes.
Okay, and then just one other issue, we had an invoice for a water main at the edge of the property that came from Water and Sand across, and apparently an invoice has been issued to North Village Associates.
That was from 2020, I guess that.
It was, yeah.
And I don't, Neil had sent that to me a week or so ago, so I need to go back and look in our records and kind of get to the bottom of what it was for. Obviously, if it's something that we're due, we'll pay it.
Okay.
It's not an issue.
Ron?
I wasn't here last week, but I did listen to last week's meeting regarding the parcel F portion of this conversation. Just for context, 2 meetings ago, we realized that to change the land use for parcel F, we would need all of the other, or a majority or all. We would need other PUD members to agree to our land use change, and we've discussed several different things that we might like to do with that project. And Jerry raised a couple good points. Said an ordinance is not the best mechanism. I don't disagree, but we found out about this 2 meetings ago, and we probably should have been working on this a while ago. And then he said, we haven't had the proper policy discussion about parcel F, and it's not fair to stall the process to have that conversation. And I 100% agree with that. And that wasn't my intention, was to specifically identify what we want to do with it, but free our hands so we can change the land use should we want to put affordable housing on it, for example. So I'd like to revisit that conversation and see where the applicant is with removing that restriction.
First of all, I agree with you. It's very, very late in this process to be discussing that. We, as we always have, are 100% on board with working with town to find solutions to whatever issue you might have or whatever proposal you might have on Common Area F. It's kind of impossible for us at this point to just say, sure, whatever. You may decide to put a sewage plant up there for all we know. So I think it's an unfair request of us at this point. That said, we will, as we always have, and you and I were part of the original MOU committee, so we are fully on board with trying to help facilitate anything that's meaningful to the town. I will say that if, for example, affordable housing was the thing for that site, I think you'd be far better off, both financially and procedurally, to put those efforts and those dollars towards one of the sites down in North Village. Because we're spending all this money on infrastructure, lift stations, and all of the backbone for the whole area down there. To develop this site up here, you'd be required to do your own lift station and a whole bunch of other infrastructure work that I think would probably make it cost prohibitive. You know, not our call one way or the other, obviously, but we're willing to work with you guys to the extent of doing something on that property. We're more than happy to look at and try to help out with anything that gets proposed up here, you know, as we always have been. You know, so we're behind town 100%. We're behind the affordable housing objectives 100%. And but not having anything to react to, you know, I can't sit here and represent that we just go, sure, we don't need to know about it in the future. No different than any of the other adjacent landowners would have, you know, have to be notified and, you know, available for public comment and feedback on any kind of project like that. So I can offer our wholehearted support at this point, but I can't say we just do a carte blanche decline of our property rights, I guess, effectively, or our input on the project.
Yeah, and I guess where I'm coming from also is 4 years ago, when at least the three of us were sitting in that room, it took us a year to really gain any traction. And then out of those conversations, it was, hey, North Village has this idea. You guys have this property over there that you don't need or can't use, and we have property over here that maybe we can't, or we can't use, that kind of thing. And can we work this land swap out? Now we're stuck with, we can only have it for open space unless you guys say so. And where that comes to be a problem is, you look at RC2 in the base area, because it's encumbered by the PUD that it's associated with, we can't just go build affordable housing on the complete line. It's a pretty messy process, so I'm trying to deal with that now.
Sure.
And unfortunately, we weren't aware of the restriction until a month ago. So while I understand your concern about a sewage plant, I was thinking pet crematorium, but you know, we've identified several things that we as a council would be open to having on that parcel. Ball fields, affordable housing, perhaps an extension of town hall. So if we could maybe, what's that? Zip line? Is that what you're about to say? Perhaps if we can come to a couple agreeable core items that can go on that parcel, I'd be more comfortable voting yes, because right now we can't build affordable housing on property we own. And right now we can't build affordable housing on property that we own over here. So I'm trying to free that up because it's pretty important to me.
Sure. I appreciate your concern very much. And I will also say that the challenge from our side too is that we were told originally to include and incorporate Common Area F and the planning for it and the infrastructure. And you know, back when we first started the process, we spent a substantial amount of time and money preparing our initial application. And the day before we turned it in, we received a very unprofessional text from your previous town manager that said, take it out. And that cost us another 3-4 months of work and probably almost $100,000 to redo the package and get back in. So I think we demonstrated, and that was at a point when I know town, that was right at COVID. And I know that was when we determined after the MOU period that y'all didn't have the money to put into it at the time because of the concerns of COVID. And we proceeded with it at our expense and included it, and then had to pay to undo it again. So just that for context. And I understand that y'all might not have been personally aware of the restrictions on there, but it's been in our package consistently since we very first applied. So I think the opportunity for vetting that has kind of come and gone. And unfortunately, the Alvarez's are in Spain, where it's, I think, 3 o'clock in the morning at this point. So I'm not at liberty or authorized to make any kind of commitment on that tonight.
just for context for the rest of the council, this will be become increasingly harder as this moves forward, because every piece of property that Claudio sells to somebody is a new person at the table to say they don't want poor people living in their backyard, blocking their view. So I'll vote no on this, hard no, on the whole project.
Jerry, I'm just thinking, it seems like the obvious one, or the one that we're hearing no one would object to, at least in theory, is affordable housing. Is there anything we can build in for something like that, a single overarching priority?
Well, you've got an ordinance that's approving this development as proposed. And it's, wouldn't be impossible, but I'm hearing objections from the landowner, and it's fine, they can object. You could approve something with a condition that they don't like and wouldn't accept. That's probably not where you want to go. I think it'd be difficult to, the way the ordinance is constructed, and sort of the nature of an ordinance like this is it's approving a specific plan with specific conditions. And that doesn't lend itself well, as I mentioned earlier, I think Roman even mentioned, that structure and that mechanism doesn't lend itself well to what really is kind of a planning process, which is, I think, what you're asking for the ordinance to require. We could, if I could spend it, if there's consensus to do this and we get some kind of head nod, then I can see what I can do for language. But what we're really trying to do is create a planning process within a project specific approval document. And that doesn't match up very well.
And look, I don't think that matches up to any process that you all would, in hindsight, I feel like, want to support. So put yourselves in the position of not being that landowner. Would you get to the end of a 4-year process and allow an adjacent property owner to put onto an ordinance the decision to throw on an entirely different land use that wasn't in an annexation agreement that's how old, and not in our application that was put in? And I will echo what Crockett said. When the previous town manager said, pull this out, we said, okay, this is amended and restated, PUD, so we have to restate something. And so in the initial PUD guide and almost every, drawing document, it referenced the annexation and it referenced the uses allowed on that parcel. So you put yourself in a position of not being the landowner. Would you ever allow that process to take place after 4 years of a specific application? And all of the discussions that went along with that, totally understanding, and again, reiterating, we get through tonight, open the conversation as quickly as you all want. But if you have to do the same process, which really you should, if you have to change a land use, put something on a piece of property, you have to amend the PUD just like we did for the last 4 years, right? You want to go through that process. Well, we're 4 years ahead. Let's have a conversation about the parcels that are in North Village and see what that looks like, and buy down strategies. And guys, there is so much creative stuff happening right now. There is public money coming out of the state to make these projects happen. You got to put them where there's infrastructure. You got to have them be shovel ready. Like you can do this in a much more creative way than put us in a position 4 years later to agree to something that it just seems honestly wildly inappropriate. That's my 2 cents.
It's not been a secret that we've talked about putting affordable housing on this property. It's been very widely open discussed, and through several of our meetings, we kept referencing that. And the discussion or the information we got was that it would be a simple land use change. And yeah, I wasn't aware that we needed permission from the other members, and, I appreciate the time and investment. I sat on the fact-finding exploratory committee with Nicholas for a year before Dr. Alvarez even told us how many units he wanted to build. That was a tough pill to swallow after 12 months sitting on there. So I've got a lot of time in this. You've got a lot of time in this. I personally can't risk in handcuffing our town on, not being able to do something with a big piece of property that we have.
Just trying to think through ways to deal with this. If we, I guess this is directed to you, Neil, and Jerry, if after tonight, immediately following this, we, want to change the land use designation from that, for that to include affordable housing. Does that seem feasible? Like, we're like, tomorrow we embark on change, or whenever we're available, whenever we, at our earliest opportunity, get in the other things that are pending with the project.
Well, sure, there is a process for it. I mean, that is an opportunity. If the town wishes to move forward with it, it'd be, you know, in concert with the property owner, to have those initial discussions and.
I think to address your concern of the ownership changes, if we embark on that right away, we will hopefully have our current owners for that period to at least get what I view as there's a ton of different uses out there, but again, it seems like the one that no one would disagree with is affordable housing, attainable housing.
What I'm hearing is they want to keep it as open space, and they would like us to invest in their project to put our affordable housing in there.
We're willing to talk to you about either one. We're not saying that, we're just saying we don't have anything to react to at the moment. This, as we said, this is very late in the game. We don't have, there's not a plan in place. There's not a thought, like, I don't know, could it be 5 units or 500? I don't know. High-rise tower, probably not, but there's any wide variety of options out there. And I think of all people, our team and the Alvarez family has spent a gigantic amount of effort to try to bring to the community everything that it wants out of this project. And we will continue to do so. And I just think I'd be surprised, Jerry can comment, but I would be honestly kind of surprised at the legality of trying to force this issue on us at this 11th hour. There is a very specific process. The property was originally given to the town as a mitigation for open space and ball fields. That's along with $3 million and a bunch of other things to improve Gothic Road, to create a rec path, to have this recreation space to take some of the pressure off the town. I don't know all the background of that. I know what was done. I don't know the negotiations that went on then. I know those were the town objectives back when Joe was still here. So I really appreciate what you're asking, and I appreciate the sincerity of your objective. And I can tell you that we are equally sincere in wanting to help facilitate in whatever fashion, down there, up here, either one, once we have something to respond to.
I have, please, Jerry, you had kind of made the statement that, maybe this particular timing isn't the best place to sort of address this, and Crockett is also kind of, do you have an ideal where would be a good place?
That's not in the past.
Well, it's actually, as Neil pointed out, it would be to change this use, would be the town applying on, because it's the landowner, you can always apply to change the use of your land. That's what Crockett and Company are doing right now. So the town could make that application either with a co-applicant in the form of the village's, the other village's owner at the moment that has an interest in this common area, or they could make the application and with the consent of, or have villages show up and say, we support, don't support this application. Then you're running that application basically through a major alteration process, because that changes the use. And that's the proper process to use. And you'd end up kind of where you are now with, an ordinance approving major alteration right at the end. of that process. Let me make mention of a couple other choices, I guess, or options. If the idea is, and seems like there's some support in the room for a conversation. We just don't know what the outcome of the conversation is, and so we're reluctant to plug in an outcome tonight, because that's hard to do, and I think we recognize that. I observed that the ordinance, the way it's presently written, has 12 months for the recordation of the plat. And there's a couple of interim dates that we might think about. To begin with, I'd want to suggest, while we're on the topic, an interim date for the plat to be amended to show this easement for Trail B, right? So we could have that done probably in a period of time that I'd be curious to have Heather and Crocker respond to. But you see where I'm headed, which is until the plat's recorded, other, parcels can't be sold to other owners. So we don't have any other owners out there to work with that we need to deal with until the plat's recorded and parcels can be sold. Referencing Roman's concern, which is right. The more they get sold, the more you have other people that are going to have to consent to this major alteration to the uses on parcel F. So I'm taking too long to say what you might consider doing is initiating this freestanding, the separate dialogue with the property owner about what the appropriate uses for parcel F would be. You could certainly contemplate or provide a delay in recording the plat while that conversation took place. And if the parties were unable to reach agreement, then the plat just gets recorded the way it is now. But since there's already a little bit of delay that we're going to have to get this easement for Trail B nailed down so that it can be reflected in the plat before it's recorded, that does give us a chance to have this discussion. If the output of the discussion is that the parties think that there could be an appropriate use of parcel F that they'd be in agreement with, we could then trigger that process. I'm just trying to kind of create a pathway that isn't one that both parties here in the form of the town and the developer will think might have some potential, and neither party says absolutely not to that process, because if either party's saying that, then we're not getting anywhere.
Well, I just wanna reiterate and enforce what Crockett and Heather were saying at the beginning of this process, which was either under Joe or my interim period. The original plan was to work with them to figure out the uses, to incorporate those uses into this PUD. And then when ISA took over, she put the kibosh on that. I can't speak to the veracity of how that was communicated, but it was definitely, she wanted it taken out. And so then with Greg and subsequently me, we were just working under that same concept to get us to this point. And I'd also say in the conversations that we've had, or my understanding on the conversations that we've with myself and the council on parcel F, is that there wasn't a consensus among the council of what we want on that space yet either. So I don't even know if we're prepared to present something to them in short order either.
But
Understood.
yeah. And that's why I suggested a catalog of things that we have talked about that aren't controversial. If you can find us money to build a high-rise affordable housing unit, that'd be great, but I don't think that's likely. So I'm just trying to find a way that we can move forward with some confidence that we're going to be able to have the option to build affordable housing. But I'm not really hearing.
Well, I think what Jerry laid out is the best we could do and still approve this.
Be nice to
Yeah,
get
I
our
said
city
I'll bring-
girls in the conversation.
My 2 cents, this process has been long, and there's been some really rough hiccups through the process. I have, thought this under never heard before, but I had faith in the applicant. through the process that they've met a lot of the things we've asked so far, including the massive reduction that we didn't even really push this low. So I'm comfortable approving it today, knowing that these conversations could start tomorrow if needed, but I don't know that I see the value in holding this up when the applicant has demonstrated, I think, a good track record through this process.
I think it's kind of similar to the wayfinding, you know, like somebody was asking for a special consideration, so to speak, in kind of a moment, and they're like, well, there's a process though, and I'd had you go through the process for it to understand it's not the exact same thing, but being that there would be a process, I'm more inclined to follow that.
Yeah, but then, like, I just come back and there's a process, but then there's zero guarantee that.
Well, their consent has been required from the get-go as a fellow party to the PUD, so that part hasn't changed.
So kind of,
I just never picked up on it. I know the distinction was there and it was, conveyed to us that, oh, yeah, we don't have to build a ball field, we can change that, but.
Because one of the things we contemplated was removing parcel F from the PUD altogether, and that was determined not, that would still require consent. But I don't think we broached that subject. We just determined what the process was, and that wasn't the road we wanted to go down either.
Long ago, I don't remember the total days announcement,
No, that's correct, and that's why we restated only what was in the, essentially, it's also in the annexation agreement. So remember, this is even more complicated than the PUD because it's part of the annexation. You know, similarly, we had to remove any lots from the West Trade parcel, right? Because it was part of the annexation agreement, not even just something that we could adjust as part of this PUD process. So, you know, parcel F is as complicated as that, and one that we're still happy to have conversations. But, and I appreciate Jerry trying to kind of find a path. I think obviously our concern is how that would tie us to recordation of final plat and everything else. And to be honest, we'd like to see a vote tonight. If it means we don't have everybody on board, I think that's fine. And in good faith, understanding that we're ready to have this conversation. We were a long time ago, and then we were given different directions. So let's just pick the conversation back up after moving forward this evening.
I agree with that.
Carlos? I have a different question, comment on a different topic, when the time is right. I don't know if now is the time, but I just wanted to.
Is it about trailing?
It's about the easement. We just discussed there's a year before recording of the plat. When do you think you could have that drawing updated to show that easement? And I would like to work within that time frame for submittal.
Sure.
And the only reason why is because a year is a long time for that to maybe get forgotten and missed as it comes to time to getting recorded. And so if we could do it at some time before then, when you think you could have it, just the submittal, at that point, I think that would be my preference.
As Heather said, it's mainly driven to the pending part of it is based on the Water and Sand District's review. So we've already been through our initial review with them. We received a few pages of comments. None of them effectively relocated anything from the way we had them, our most recent submittal, which is what is included in the package that you have now. We're planning on resubmitting, addressing all of those comments and updating that submittal a week from Friday. And so it's hopefully within a couple of months, we should be, give Mike time to review and come back with any other comments. But at that point, sometime midsummer, we should be solidified on the location and the layout of all the utilities so that we could lock that down. So sometime over this.
July 15th. July 15th?
August 1st?
August 1st.
August 1st. Okay, I've got a draft amendment to that condition 5 going, and I can plug in the blank when we're ready for a motion.
That's what I was gonna ask, the with conditions, there's 5 conditions. It's this wording of this motion needs to be correct.
Yes, I think I heard that. Yeah, what I'll probably suggest when you're ready for it is that, you know, I'll suggest a motion to approve the ordinance by title with the following changes, and then I can read them, and there are gonna be changes just to condition 5, which I'm gonna rework to address the dialogue we've just had. That's easy enough. From a process standpoint, it's beginning to look like, I haven't heard from the whole council, but it's beginning to look like maybe you want to take a motion to approve with the condition 5 changes that I can articulate. Strikes me if that doesn't pass, another motion after that could be to continue for 2 weeks, because then, you know, that buys you the time at least to have a little bit more of a conversation about this parcel F use. But those are the 2 doors I can think. Well, door 3 is always you deny. So those I think are the doors, and that's probably the order in which you take the motions and see how it goes. But I'm ready to read off the motion, but only when your discussion is complete in the room.
Steve has a question.
Rowan, does starting the process tomorrow, if this passed, does it give you any sort of peace of mind with it, or no?
Honestly, like, this has been such a long process. I mean, I was 4 years in myself, and it's unfortunate that Dr. Alvarez isn't here. If he was here at the next meeting, he's a stand-up guy. I think he's always tried to do the right thing. And if he had said, I'm all for affordable housing, I'm all for public space, and if you guys talk about bumping out your town hall, I'm all on board with that. If this isn't the right time to talk about that, but I want to work with you on that. I would be much more comfortable with that.
I can tell you that's exactly what he's told me numerous times in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
That is what he told us to convey, was exactly that.
That's the intent of what we're trying to say.
Since we brought this up last month.
Mhm.
I would just like to throw in that, I, for one, have absolutely no reason not to trust the applicant to, you know, work in good faith with us. Just from the get-go, the standard has been, they have cooperated, they have wanted to do the right thing, and I just trust that that has not changed, and I have no problem at all approving this with the condition, with the understanding that, yeah, we'll figure this out satisfactorily. I have that level of confidence in, their participation in the process that I'm comfortable moving it ahead.
Agreed.
Steve?
I'm only bringing this up because this trail stuff really, we just got edified on this, like in the last day, this especially. Trail M, the equestrian trail. Has there been an agreement or is there a handshake deal or anything in place with Fantasy Ranch relative to the placement of that trail and the existence of the trail?
We don't have any locations or anything. Again, a lot of this is dependent on topography once we get the infrastructure all in place. Yes, we've been working with Chuck since the beginning, spoke to him 2 days ago about getting his water back on, and we, Dr. Alvarez especially would love to see some form of horse operation maintained out there, which is good or bad, depending on your neighbor, but that's what we have I think it was 5,000 square foot sort of agricultural building set aside in there for that. If we can make that work and if it works for Chuck, he would really like to do that.
Okay. The only concern I'm having, maybe about feedback, but having HOA dues for my condo paid for an equestrian trail, we're really focused on trying to keep cost of living, especially month to month cost of living down. I don't know why it's just kind of running weird. Is this something that you shouldn't even, does anybody else have concern with that? I can leave that. No?
I think it would have a nominal effect, if at all, in that it's a relatively inexpensive portion of it, and if it does stay as an equestrian trail, we'd pretty much probably set the lease or the agreement up with that operator, whether it's Chuck or anybody else, to be responsible for taking care of that. And again, it would be diluted over the entire HOA. It's not, it wouldn't be just the affordable housing units, which are, I think, 25% of the total. So it would be, if anything, a very nominal impact.
And then
But I appreciate what you said.
restriction, that it doesn't affect the affordable housing units, I mean.
It would be it could come in the declarations as those come on, we could address those types of things as well.
Okay, and then to answer your other question, from the beginning, Dr. Alvarez had said, if he does nothing else with his property, he'd wanted to keep the equestrian, like, history part of it still moving, open space and the rumble space.
Yeah.
Like, if this whole thing exploded, those are the three things that would still happen.
Oh, and I think Fantasy Ranch is an incredible asset to that section of the valley, so, I'm for the trail, I'm for all that, just sometimes the absorption where our cost is incurred.
Just knock a couple square feet off the affordable house. It's gonna be small, they pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question, because it's always a problem, and Heather's on the Affordable Housing Committee over in her way, and I've been engaged with a lot of it myself, and it's always the problem is keeping the maintenance and the upkeep and all the dues, where it needs to be. You can make a unit and sell it to somebody for $100,000, but if it costs them $5,000 a year to, and side things besides taxes and everything, yeah, it's definitely a problem, so appreciate the question.
So like that.
Ready for the motion?
All right.
Ready to say?
Ready for a motion?
Hey, Jerry, just since this one has stuff that's not written down in our packet that you're gonna provide, would you mind doing a form of motion or suggested motion, and then maybe one of our counselors can see fit to
Sure.
so move,
You bet, I'm prepared for that, and so what I'm gonna do is take the motion that's in the packet on page 28 of 804. That was 804, just. Okay, I should give up my day job, all right, fine. I'm gonna take that, and then what I'm gonna be, the stuff I'm inventing new is gonna be hung on to the end, but I'll read the whole thing, just so that you know that. So the proper motion would be to move to adopt ordinance number 5, series 2024, an ordinance of the town council of the town of Mount Crested Butte, Colorado, approving a planned unit development major alteration for the village at Mount Crested Butte with conditions, and in connection therewith, approving an extended vesting period for the same on second reading with the following correction to section 1 of the ordinance, condition 5, to read in its entirety as follows. The location, sequencing, maintenance, design, access points, and connectivity of interior trails with adjacent neighborhoods shall be as shown on Exhibit L, Sheet L.1.04, comma, potential trails build-out, comma, of the approved final plan submittal, period. Prior to recording, the final plat shall be adjusted to provide a legal easement for Trail B. That's the motion.
By August 1st.
Oh, sorry, on or before August 1st. Thank you. Sorry, I had an arrow. So for Trail B, on or before August 1st, 2024.
So moved.
That sounds like a, okay,
I'll second it.
so a motion from Janet and a second from Dwayne. Excuse me 1 second, just to make sure I say this correctly. Motion from Janet and a second from Dwayne to approve ordinance number 5, series 2024, an ordinance of the town council of the town of Mount Crested Butte, Colorado, approving a planned unit development major alteration for the village at Mount Crested Butte with conditions, and in connection therewith, approving an extended vested period for the same. This is second reading, and the motion and conditions are as stated by our town attorney. So, any further discussion?
I would just thank everyone for the conversation. It's obvious how important keeping access to this property is. It's not a great time to be dealing with this part of the process. I wish we would have uncovered that tidbit and somebody would have spoken up or, you know, I was under a different impression of what we could do and when. I know Dr. Alvarez is a good guy. I've talked with him since the beginning and I appreciate the sentiment that he's relayed to his team and I hope we can make this a priority to get sniffing in front of the North Village team soon.
Thanks for the rock, start due diligence on it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that stuff flew under my radar, so
Agreed.
appreciate it.
All right, anything else for further discussion?
Dwayne,
Yes.
Steve,
Yep.
Janet,
Yes.
Alec,
Yes.
Roman,
Yes.
Nicholas.
Yes. Okay.
Do them both or just that covers both? I think that covers everything.
Yeah, it was both parts of it.
Excellent.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Any other, thank you, Craig.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Appreciate all
Thanks,
the work.
everybody. Appreciate it.
Roman, we definitely are on board with you. So as soon as we can get something to talk about, we're happy to do that.
And Dave Ox is here in case anybody has any other trails questions.
I heard he's doing maintenance.
Yes.
Covering all day.
Personally. All right, we have public hearing coming up, 2 minute break.
Hey, maybe trail name with word manure in it or something.
All right, we're back, and next item on the agenda is a public hearing, and the public hearing is on a major alteration, preliminary PUD and preliminary subdivision applications for the Upper Prospect and Mount Crested Butte development submitted by Aaron Huckstep of Huckstep Law, representing Crested Butte Land Holdings LLC and the applicant GCM Squared Limited. And so, TJ is going to introduce that for us, but first I'm going to get into the public hearing portion of it. So here we go. It is 7:17. Today is Tuesday, May 7th, and the time is 7:17 PM. I'm now opening the public hearing for the preliminary PUD plan, the major alteration of the Prospect PUD and preliminary subdivision for Upper Prospect. We're holding these as a single combined public hearing in person and via Zoom. The following members of the Mount Crested Butte Town Council are in attendance: Dwayne Leonards, Janet Farmer, myself, Nicholas Kempen, Roman Kaloje, Alec Lindeman, and Steve Morris. We were also joined by the following staff: TJ Dubak, Community Planning Strategies, Community Development Director Neil Starkeybaum, Town Clerk Tiffany O'Connell, Town Manager Carlos Volato, and Town Attorney Jerry Dahl. So we're here to receive public input regarding the preliminary PUD plan, major alteration of the Prospect PUD and preliminary subdivision plan for Upper Prospect at Mount Crested Butte. Tiffany, was this public hearing properly noticed?
Yes, a combined hearing notice was published in the Crested Butte News on April 19th, 2024, and posted in the required location. The applicant sent public notice via certified mail to the required properties by Friday, April 19th deadline, and provided copies of the certified mail receipts to staff.
All right, thank you. And so I know we've had a number of comments, but it looks like no comments in the packet, just ones we've received subsequent to the packet. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then just so you all know, one, I believe two, is it two, Tiffany, that we got after the fact?
This one was on the village. You only received one, and it was that letter that came in at like 5 o'clock today that I handed out in between things.
You're right, this one is for the, yes. Okay, so I think you all have the written public comment in front of you. And so now we'll move to staff project introduction. So TJ, I think this is you.
All right, good evening. I am working on one screen, so let's see if I can get this thing to, you're not seeing that, are you? All right, bear with me just a second. Try to do this. Dope. Taskbar. I want that. I want to share. I want to share that. All right, there. I think I got it. Are you seeing the full PowerPoint screen?
Yes.
All right. Now I can't see my notes, so we'll have to go through that, but should be good. All right. So thank you, Mayor. So as you mentioned, we're talking about another major alteration. This one is a preliminary subdivision plan and a preliminary PUD plan. As mentioned, we're going to present both of them together, and then we'll talk about both of them. There'll be two separate motions at the end. If I can get my tech to work. There we go. Well, before I get into this, just again, I'm going to kind of go through a pretty high level, touch on some of the major components of the application and the request. And then we'll have an opportunity for further questions along the way. So guess I just don't want to be talking to myself. So I want to hear what you all and the public have. So we'll try to get to that point as quick as possible. So first, just a general overview. This is a project that's at the top of Prospect Drive. There was an amended or a lapsed PUD guide that was dictating this project, so therefore necessitating the amendment. This is including what's referred to as the remainder of development area E, because a portion of development area E is already developed and already platted. This is for the remainder. It's also for all of development area F, all including. It is about almost 42 acres and including 52 lots. There's also through the review of this application, there's some applicability in the annexation agreement that you'll see throughout there. Like most subdivisions, it also includes right-of-way, roadway for access, as well as some open space connections, and we'll talk through some of those through the presentation. So first, lot dimension or the density summary of what's being proposed. This is potentially a complex table here, but what I think is important is one, that the average lot size is 0.68 acres, ranging from the largest lots of almost 3 acres to just over a quarter acre, 0.33, third of an acre. And the lot change, right? So that, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the second to right column, lot change, is what's being proposed compared to what was previously anticipated through the previous PUD. This change is proposing 2 additional lots for a total of 73 lots, inclusive of development area E and F. As I mentioned, only 52 of those are being proposed as part of this project. Now, when we look at each of those lots and we look at the uses that are allowed, in this project, as proposed, only single-family homes are being proposed, whereas previously duplexes were also permitted. And there was also kind of a range of units that could be allowed in these 2 development areas. And so when you take into the maximum amount permitted or entitled through the previous PUD guide, there's actually a net lot reduction of 25 units in this proposal, with a total of 73 units, again, as you can see on the title column to the right. So more lots, fewer units, and all single family, I think is the key takeaway there. kind of breaking that down a little bit more in the PUD guide is there's some maximum residential square footage for each of the lots prescribed in the PUD guide. And in general, those are 25%, or there's a building envelope. And they go up to a certain amount too. So there's a cap on the square footage. I will mention this note on the kind of the bottom right of the slide that there's a recommended planning commission condition to reduce the maximum lot sizes when they combine lots. Sorry, not lot sizes, residential square footage when lots are combined to be not more than 25% or 8,500 square feet. And you can see that in the condition as drafted in the staff report. So that would be kind of a change to what you're seeing on this slide with a max cap on those properties. The roadway layout does extend Prospect Drive as well as include roads A, B, and C throughout the project. There are some additional cul-de-sacs. That is a change in the layout from the sketch plan a little bit. And there's also a request for a Hammersack variance, and we'll get into that in I think the next slide. When we looked at this development, the standards used for the roads were road layouts for single-family homes or residential with 16 or more lots. And as you can see in the table, it's also in the staff report, the proposed right-of-way and road cross sections meet those standards with a couple of exceptions where there is 7% grade. And I think one of them is kind of just at the tail end or the start of the project and whatnot. So nothing significant, but within the thresholds of the design standards. So the Hammersack in section 18.131B, it does lay out exception criteria that could be used or would be used to allow for Hammersacks. And in this particular case, subsection 1 is the only one that's not met by the proposal. And that proposal, or sorry, that requirement is that the Hammersack serve no more than 5 dwelling units. In this, and you can see the slide shows it, here's the Hammersack that's being proposed, road D, and it is serving between 10 and 11 homes. And the reason for the differentiation there is that it depends on where one of the driveways might be placed, might be on this leg or not. Through looking at other areas of Prospect and Homestead, it appears that this is not inconsistent with other Hammersacks as approved previously. And also of note, we've talked about this with the Fire Protection District, and they have not, I guess they don't necessarily approve it. They don't also, deny it. There was a lot of conversation at the Planning Commission about whose authority it is, and it is up to you all, the town council, to approve it or not, such a waiver. Also of note that you might have seen in the packet that the Planning Commission did include a commentary about the fire district reviewing it prior to final approval, and that would occur through the normal process of the final plan submittal. So we felt that from staff perspective, that was adequate. As far as the utility plan, yes, water and sewer will be extended for this project, as well as a lift station that would be needed. And by now everybody I think is aware that the Mount Crested Butte Water and Sand District has not approved the utility plans. But they have provided a few correspondence, I believe the latest being April 24th that was included in the packet, making a suggestion on the condition language, and we've accommodated that language, discussed it with the applicant, and everybody seems to be okay with it. Just real quickly, as far as the community housing units, I'm not going to read all of this, but in short, the Fifth Amendment to the Annexation and Development Agreement does obligate or has addressed community housing obligations, and through that process, this project is still significantly similar to what was discussed or anticipated in that Fifth Amendment to the Annexation and Development Agreement, and therefore the obligations, there are no additional community housing units that are required related to the remainder of Area E or Development Area F as being contemplated in this application. At such time, additional areas, development areas are developed, that those may be required, but at this time, the obligations for E and F have been determined to be met. And then the last, this is a change since Planning Commission, but it did come to our attention that Section 15 of the amended and restated PUD guide states that the amendment must be approved by the declarant and the town. So we just added just to make sure that it was really clear that we do, we've added a condition number 4 that is requiring the applicant to provide approval from the declarant. With conversations with the applicant in preparation of this staff report and this condition, they're not concerned, or they feel that they've already gotten that approval and shouldn't be a problem. But we just wanted to make sure that it was clear that that provision needed to be met with the submittal of the final plans. So with that, we have again 2 requests and 2 separate motions. So I'm just going to go through these here real quick separately. So this is for the subdivision. The Planning Commission recommended approval with 2 conditions. These are also in the staff report, and staff is continuing on the subdivision, the preliminary plat subdivision, to continue with those same recommendations, those same 2 recommendations. And condition number 1 here is basically an approval of the hammersack at the terminus of Road C as proposed. And then the preliminary PUD plan, we had Planning Commission recommendation, which included, as I mentioned earlier, condition number 3 that referred to a maximum of 8,500 square feet rather than the proposed 10,000 square feet in both area E and F. So that would kind of put that ceiling on both of those. And then as we go into the staff recommendations, 1 and 2 have not changed. 3, staff is forwarding, if you will, Planning Commission's recommendations into their own this evening. And then we've added condition number 4, which refers to requiring the approval of the declarant at submittal of the final development plan. So that's all that I have as far as a presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all might have. And I suspect that the applicant might have a presentation as well.
Yeah, thank you, TJ. Anything else from staff as far as the project introduction? Just checking. Okay. Next part of this then is applicant comments. Applicant? Anything you'd like to present?
We also have a PowerPoint. Can we get that lined up? We sent it over ahead. Oh, you got it. You got it. Okay. Never mind. Give us just 1 second.
Also have hard copies of it, if anybody wants something to doodle on.
Would you all like a paper copy of our PowerPoint so you can take notes?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Paper menus.
Hey, can you just make sure to email me a copy of the
But it's yours.
Yes, thank you.
Let me see if I have enough. Diversity on. Yeah, one more.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Justin Biggs. I'm the president of real estate for GCM Squared and the proponent for the application that's before you this evening. I'd like to introduce our team, Carolyn White and Dustin Jarapata from Brownstein, Tyler Harpel from SGM Engineering, and our man Aaron Huckstep, who I'm sure you guys have probably seen for many times before from Huckstep Law. While not everybody from our team will be presenting tonight, we're all available for any questions as we go through this process. First, let me thank you for taking the time to consider our application. We've been working on this project for many years now, and we're glad to finally have the opportunity to present our vision to you. Before my team gets into the details of the application, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about what makes Upper Prospect such a sensible place to build new housing. If this site does not immediately come to mind, imagine the top of Prospect Drive where the pavement ends. There's a gate and the dirt road begins, commonly used for parking for people visiting the Umbrella Bar and hiking out on the ridge. Our project extends from that point about 2/3 of the way down to the Prospect Lift. When you look at the area we're trying to create, it has some specific features that are ideal for what we're proposing. The home sites have planned range from 1/3 of an acre, about 1.5 acres. This is flat buildable area with enough space for parking and snow storage. The location is outside of the avalanche zones, but is still directly adjacent to the ski resort for easy access. This is an excellent place to build single-family homes on already impacted land. In other words, this is not a greenfield development we're proposing here. The architecture that's possible here will also blend beautifully with the landscape, and these sites will allow for homes to go up without blocking any of the existing neighbors' view corridors. From a practical standpoint, this site is ready to go. There's infrastructure in place, utilities, all to the edges of the site and many of them into the site. Mount Crested Butte is also planned for several things in place to demonstrate it's ready for growth. The water treatment plant expansion that came online a few years ago now has the capability to handle 1.5 million gallons per day. That's around double the current peak demand and 5 times the average use. This expansion was paid for by a loan and was designed for the town's expected growth. On the wastewater side, I'm sure you know it's fairly common knowledge that there is a trunk line capacity issue in town, off of our site, but in town. And while the water district has not identified exactly what that scope is, we do know the capacity problem exists with or without our home sites. We plan to be part of the solution. We view our participation as even more necessary, considering this project adds additional revenue and is a source for the water district and the town for funds. This means that our final approval should not be hindered by the capacity issue. As for why this part of Prospect should be home sites as the PUD was originally planned and approved, most of Gunnison County is public land owned by the National Forest Service, BLM, or as designated recreational area. Of the roughly 20% of the county that is remaining, half of that is designated for strictly agricultural use. So it doesn't leave a whole lot of land for us to build new homes. Single family homes are perfect for this location, as it's intended to be developed as low density housing as it is. This project comes with economic benefits as well. Building new homes supports job growth in construction and hospitality. It helps support the water district through more tap fees. Also increases town revenue through sales tax, property tax, and fees on construction. Property tax collected for the entitled sites will be about 3 times what they are today. And once the homes are complete on these sites, it would be more than 5.5 times today's revenue. Just thinking in terms of the water district, which took out the previous mentioned $23.1 million loan for the plant expansion. The community of Mount Crested Butte pays a little over $1.37 million each year in debt service for this loan. Project also directly benefits Prospect homeowners. Prospect's Metro District levies a hefty mill of 22.972 to pay off its bonds. This mill pays back the construction and costs for roadways and utilities. And it was meant to be shared by the various sites in Upper Prospect we're speaking about tonight. More property tax will have a huge impact on paying off the debts of both the Metro District and the Water and Sanitation District. The path to being debt-free is a significant benefit to the community. Considering the capital improvement projects on the horizon, this revenue will become imperative. Upper Prospect is one of the most distinct areas in Mount Crested Butte, and arguably one of the most beautiful ski in and ski out pieces of land anywhere in the Rocky Mountains. Our vision for Upper Prospect is developed in a way that reflects the Butte in both its quality and respect for the mountains. Now let me take you through a little bit of the history of the project. As I'm sure you guys know, the project began with the Waltons and the Callaway family in 2001, followed by the Muller family in 2004. And for these previous owners, there's a promise of economic revival for our town. Similar to what occurred in 2001, the development was negatively impacted by the recession of 2008, and the entire area is still rebounding from that today. However, unlike what happened in the past, we have 34 of 52 home sites already under pre-sale contract, demonstrating significant demand for this project despite challenging economic conditions. The town therefore can have confidence in realizing financial benefits very quickly. And on the people side, those under pre-sale contract already know and have been attracted to what makes this community so very, very special. Many of these buyers are even established and well-respected Crested Butte locals. The original PUD for these parcels was thoroughly reviewed and approved. This new application is nearly identical, just has a few common sense changes, like keeping the existing roadway in place and some realigned, reconfigured lot lines to the proposed lot lines. Right now, this part of the Prospect is falling far short of its potential. Its primary use is a summer wedding venue for a billion-dollar resort company. And we think the highest and best use far exceeds that, and it is housing and as well as promoting job creation and community development. I started working on this project in 2020. These home sites were waiting for someone to pick up the baton and breathe life back into the project. We're committed to making sure we see this project through from concept to completion. This special part of the mountain has the potential to be a truly iconic part of Mount Crested Butte. We're here tonight to present a clear vision for the future development of Upper Prospect, which has been planned for new residential housing for over 2 decades. We intend to meet or exceed your expectations and give you a strong confidence to approve this application this evening. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Carolyn White, who will present the criteria.
Good evening. Is this on? Good evening, Mayor, members of Town Council, and members of town staff, members of the public. My name is Carolyn White. I'm Land Use Counsel for the applicant here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to present this project to you. As was mentioned, we're here to request that you approve the preliminary PUD plan for the major alteration to the Prospect PUD and also the corresponding subdivision preliminary plan. As was mentioned by TJ, the presentation is combined, even though you'll be taking 2 separate votes. We're going to present everything all at once. As was also mentioned, this application will allow development of up to 52 single-family detached homes. And this will complete one more phase in that long-standing Prospect development for the benefit of existing, returning, and new Mount Crested Butte residents. As was also mentioned by the town clerk, this project has complied with all of the notice requirements, so I just want to mention that for the record. One key characteristic of this presentation is that it is almost exactly the same as the original PUD that was approved, except that we are proposing less density. As TJ showed you in those charts in his presentation, even though there's 2 more lots, there are fewer homes total because the original PUD allowed duplexes and triplexes. So what's being proposed tonight is almost exactly the same, except it's slightly less density in terms of overall number of units. And there are a few changes in the configuration of how the roads and the lots lay, and we'll explain those to you in just a moment. So the purpose of our presentation tonight is to show you how this PUD plan major alteration, I have to get used to that terminology, used to call it a minor amendment or a major amendment. a major alteration to the PUD plan, and the subdivision plan complies with your criteria in the town code. So I just want to briefly summarize what those criteria are. The zoning code says that a preliminary PUD plan is evaluated based on conformance with the zoning code, conformance with the master plan, and additional community benefits and contributions. So we're going to go through those things for you tonight. The preliminary review also ensures that the subdivision plat meets the intents, policies, and goals of the master plan and complies with the code. We'll show you how it does that tonight. And so now I'd like to ask our engineer, Tyler Harple, to come up and walk you through exactly what's in the plan, what's in the site, what's in the subdivision. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tyler Harple, a senior engineer with SGM. Just going back through a little bit of history. When I first moved to the Valley in 2005, Prospect Phase 1's completion of construction was kind of the first thing that I worked on. So I was working at closing out the construction with that. And then I've been involved with the design, the review, and the construction of Phase 2, Phase 4, Wild Horse, Homestead. Since then, so I'm very familiar with what's gone on up there and what's been in there. When people ask me how familiar I am with it, I like to tell them that I've actually literally been inside every manhole up there. So there's that component to it. I'll kind of walk through kind of the layout of this plan. We talked a little bit about the history, and we kind of mentioned how it was more or less identical to before, with a few minor changes. The main largest minor change that you can see is right after the little I-shaped loop there. We're keeping the Prospect Drive in alignment with where the actual road is. So you can see at the bottom half of this slide is the picture of the actual road that's there. If we would have continued with the 2001 roadway alignment, it would have moved over 50 feet. We would have had to clear cut another 50 feet of trees. So we slid that road over to be in alignment with what's already cut up there. And what that did was it shrunk down the number of those larger previous E lots to these smaller lots, which is why we went up from 50 to 52 lots. But as Caroline mentioned, everything came back down as far as density, and even because we have smaller lots that can have smaller max square footage on there. If everybody were to build the maximum square footage on all those lots, we're proposing a less square footage of the whole overall development there. So with that, you know, this site is, as Justin said, is probably the easiest component up there in Prospect. It's once we get up on top of the ridge, things are a lot flatter, grades are a lot better. There's only one little wetlands on the site that, you know, a lot of rest of Prospect had to develop around a lot of other wetlands. So there's a lot less natural restrictions to be moved around. And so this is kind of one of the easier components of Prospect to design it. And that's what we kind of built everything around. So the roadways, as we mentioned, in the kind of lighter color there, that's Prospect Phase 4 that comes up. And then, you know, we've got the highlighted pink lots and roads that are coming in. So Prospect Drive will continue up and kind of end with the cul-de-sac that was requested during, it was just dead ending, but we'll, you know, one of the things that was requested during the sketch plan. And then we have three different little offshoot cul-de-sacs, two cul-de-sacs and one with Hammersack. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the roadway is to be 22 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders. And this is compliant with what's up at the rest of the Prospect and with the standards of the town. So there's nothing out of the ordinary in there. Again, the roadway is 22 to 24 feet wide, depending on which one of those offshoots that we are. The photo up there is right up there at the end, where the end of Prospect Drive ends with the pavement. And there's the T that goes off on what we're calling roadway C. It is important to point out right here where the pavement ends, but the gravel keeps going. That is the one section that TJ was talking about that was 7%. That is actually in the Prospect Phase 4 platted section. So the only little piece that's 7% is in Phase 4 and not actually in ours. We would just be paving that section. And then the rest of it is all 6% and less than our new proposed section. TJ mentioned the Hammersack variance. So I do want to talk about this just a little bit of that roadway C coming down to the Hammersack. First off, backing up, everything along that roadway, all the E lots
and that roadway alignment. We have not changed any of that since the previous iterations. That's the one section that has really changed, stayed exactly the same. So this is what was always kind of anticipated there and approved there. And we can go into one of the main reason that we're doing this is it has about 50% less footprint, actually 48% less footprint than a full-blown cul-de-sac in there. So that's less tree removal, less clear cutting, less pavement, and less snow storage and less runoff. So that's one of the main reasons that we're going with that, and we think that fits that site in that area a whole lot better. And going into the specifics of that hammersack, there's two different hammersack requirements. The one on the bottom is the one out of the town of Mount Crested Butte code. That requires the hammersack wings to be 45 feet long and 22 feet wide. The top one up there is actually out of the fire code. Fire code only requires 40-foot long wings that are 20 feet wide. We are currently proposing 22 feet wide and 50-foot long wings. So what we're proposing is actually a slightly larger footprint than either of the two requirements. So we meet all the requirements. And I know there's a little bit of confusion out there of why we're asking for the variance. Again, the variance is just because we're having more than 5 lots on here. The grades and the dimensions of the hammersack meet the town codes and the water department codes. And again, just for clarification, if this were to be built in Gunnison County and not town of Mount Crested Butte, fire department would have said, perfect, it meets all of our requirements. So it's only the town of Mount Crested Butte code that says 5 or fewer lots that we're asking for the variance of. And then also TJ mentioned there is precedence for these existing hammersacks. There's 6 of them existing in Prospect. They're already in there. I know during the planning commission meeting, we had lots of discussion was, well, how did those end up in there? Did the code change, something like that? No, the code didn't change. They just went through a very similar variance process. We said, hey, this makes a little bit more sense here. And we go through the variance process and get from there. So those green ones are the ones that exist in Wild Horse, at the end of Walking Deer, at the end of Kokanee, at the end of Gray Fox, and then the purple one would be the one we're currently proposing. So that's the hammersacks. Talking a little bit specifically about the lot layouts. You know, as I mentioned, there's one wetlands on there. The photo is of the one in the wetlands. We've got the building envelope set back so that you can, it has the 25-foot setback on there. And you can also, you know, one of the questions is, well, is there room to get the driveway to that lot? Again, you can even see with this photo, everything on the left-hand side of that photo is plenty of room to get by with the 25-foot setback for that lot. So we have looked at all those. A lot of the larger E-lots have actual kind of building envelopes that are set per the topography. And that's why you kind of see those different shapes, you know, primarily like along that top cul-de-sac up above. So that the building envelope is kind of on the flatter section of the site, and then it might drop off steep down below. The larger lot has that in it, but the building envelope would be on the flatter spot. The only other kind of 2 weird spots on there are E21 and E22. And they're the flagpole shaped pieces right up there. Again, this is what was always kind of proposed in the previous iterations of these. And so they would have a shared driveway that goes to E22 and E21 would have a shared driveway. Again, there's precedence for this in Prospect. Existing E8 and E7 have a shared driveway. And there's another spot actually down in the D lots also that has a shared driveway in it too. Yeah, so I think that's that with the layout of those. The last thing that we haven't really talked about too much is the pink spots on here. There's a couple different kinds of those pink spots. Those are all, there's the open space tracks that are kind of the darker pink spots. Those are just actual tracks themselves for open space that primarily allow access into the green open space. So that bigger green open space.
When you're talking about, can you please point out what you're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I'm going, so essentially these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the left
You talking about the orange? Dark orange?
No, the pink spots. The orange spot is parcel G, that's the potential future, whatever happens on parcel G at the top of where the umbrella bar. I'm talking about these kind of salmon pink spots that are just slivers, they're kind of the darker red.
I see pink as all the lots.
Okay,
That's what I thought too, so.
Yeah.
So I think the dark red
Yep.
is my vision, just what you're talking
Note,
about.
note for future meetings, maybe a laser mirror or
Yeah,
something.
there we go.
That's right, salmon. Salmon, yeah.
So the green open space is what is in Vail Resorts has the resort operations easement on there, so that's not in our actual development. But those 5 different tracks allow you to get through our development onto those open space where Vail has different, trails and amenities and that sort of thing. There's a couple different kinds of them right here at the bottom. Is an actual easement across the lot. That's where one of the existing Vail Resorts roadways goes through, right? So that'll stay there in access. And the other one is a trail skiway easement it's essentially Gus's Way. It goes through there and that's the one skier bridge that would be very similar to the other skier bridges in Prospect. So those are the different ways that you can access in and out and through the subdivision to the various open spaces and ski trails. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Carolyn, who will kind of talk about how it connects with overall master.
Great, thank you. So now you know what's in the site, and I'm just gonna talk a little bit about consistency with the master plan. There's a 2023 master plan, and I'm sure you're all very aware, and the future land use map for this area does show single family residential, so the proposed use is consistent with the master plan vision for what the proposed use should be. We're not proposing to change that. Obviously, that master plan was adopted after extensive public input, and so it shouldn't be any surprise to anyone that this PUD is coming forward to fulfill that master plan and execute by delivering these 52 single family lots. And also the level of development in terms of the density is consistent with what's envisioned in the master plans. And is consistent with the town's needs and also able to be served by existing infrastructure. This project advances the master plan's goals and policies by providing the single family homes that are envisioned for this part of Prospect. Approving the preliminary PUD plan would therefore be consistent with the master plan, and the same is true for the subdivision preliminary plat. On this slide, you are seeing a little bit of information about the density, and what we're showing here is consistency with the existing density that's in the vicinity around this proposed development. The single family residential use we propose is consistent with what was approved in 2001, but slightly less intensive, as mentioned, because there are no proposed duplexes or triplexes allowed within this PUD. As of 2023, Mount Crested Butte had an estimated 1,765 housing units. Adding additional 52 more housing units will be a very minimal impact overall on the town and will not negatively impact or adversely burden the community, utilities, or public facilities, which is one of the sub-criteria in the plan there. It's a very small increase to the total developed area in the project, and it's within the maximum number of units that was originally allowed. And there are letters in the file from all the service providers indicating that they will be able to serve. We've already talked a little bit about the fire and about the water and sewer capacity. Happy to answer some more questions about that if you would like. As this plan is being refined, the developer is in discussions with Mount Crested Butte Water and Sand about the sanitary sewer issues. And we anticipate that a final resolution to that issue would come forward at the final plat stage. I just want to mention the original PUD allowed up to 98 housing units in this area. And at that time, those units were able to be accommodated within the existing water and sanitation system. And so we're actually now proposing 52 units, so a significant reduction from that which was already within the planning for the water and sanitation district. I think next slide.
Is there a way you can email this? I'm sorry, there's just some.
It actually did get emailed, I think.
That was the other
PJ.
presentation.
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm having trouble reading some of the print.
Certainly.
One of your.
Yeah, we can.
That'd be appreciated.
Right now? You mean like
I don't
after we're
know,
done talking?
I don't know if somebody has it on their phone already, but, you know.
If
whatever.
someone has it, they wanna send it to me, yeah, my email, I can forward it. You know, I'm all in this.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you.
The application packet does contain a comprehensive analysis of the conditions in the area. And this subdivision plat does subdivide the remaining unplatted lots in development area E to conform with the existing platted lots in area E. And it subdivides all the lots in area F in coordination with each other, consistent with the principles and purposes of the subdivision code. This next slide. Well, he's trying to email now, so I can't change my slides.
Probably scan it and send it.
Here we go. So, this slide is summarizing all the planning principles in the code that are intended to be taken into account when designing a subdivision. I won't go through all of these individually, but it includes things like, keeping the lots away from hazardous conditions, keeping them where utilities and services can be conveniently provided, and minimizing disruptions to the natural features. All of those principles have been incorporated into this subdivision plat. Next slide. So there's also a consideration of community contributions in the code relative to PUDs. And one of the things I wanted to mention in that regard is trails. I know that you all have spent some time this evening discussing trails in the context of another application. And wanted to let you know that even though they are off-site of this PUD, the applicant has been coordinating with the Crested Butte Mountain Resort about how to relocate and preserve the trail network once this development is completed. And as Tyler just showed you, there are specific connection points that are identified throughout the subdivision plat of where the existing trails that are off-site can be connected through and into the subdivision and how you can access them. But there's also some discussion about how the resort may realign and how this developer may coordinate with the resort to realign and improve the existing trail network off-site from this PUD. And although those exact specifics haven't been hammered out yet, they are in process, and that's something that we hope to be able to present to you by the time we get to the final plat. As Justin already mentioned, one of the other sort of benefits of this PUD is, this was included in the metro district, it was included in this water and sand district, but it has not been contributing because the construction hasn't occurred yet. And so now there'll be the opportunity, once this is platted and able to be constructed on, for these home values to increase, for them to actually be contributing property taxes and helping to reduce and ultimately pay off that debt. And so that's a benefit to all of the surrounding participants in those districts. And also the other community benefit that was mentioned is that, as TJ mentioned at the very beginning, pursuant to the annexation agreement, the housing community benefit requirements have already been satisfied with the original portion of this property that was annexed of the Prospect development. And so there's no additional community housing requirement as a part of this specific Upper Prospect application. So, as we hope we have shown you here tonight, this application meets all the criteria in your code for the preliminary PUD plan and for the subdivision plat. It fulfills the purposes of the PUD zoning code. It's consistent with the master plan, provides some additional benefits to the community, and also complies with all the other applicable state and local regulations. The same is true of all the applicable approval criteria for the preliminary plat. The subdivision component of the preliminary plan complies with the zoning and subdivision regulations. It's consistent with the intent, policies, and goals of the master plan. It provides for the best use of the land while minimizing impact on the natural features, and plats the unplatted land in a coordinated and coherent way. So with that, we ask for your approval of both the preliminary PUD plan, major alteration, and also the subdivision plat. We also have our whole team here to answer any questions you may have, and we look forward to that dialogue. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. All right, next part of this process is public comment and questions. So do we have anyone here in the audience in person for public comment on this particular? No. What about online for public comment? Anyone here on Zoom for public comment on this? Okay. Well, hearing none, this would normally be the spot where the applicant can respond to public comment, but I think we can skip over that part, yes? So now it's town council question and answer with the applicant. So, counselors, questions? Janet?
Are y'all familiar with the concerns of the owners of lot 820, the Browns?
Is that the letter that we just submitted this evening?
Yes.
I'm gonna ask Mr. Wexler to address that since he is familiar with that, if that's all right with you.
Keep stealing my thunder, Janet. Unbelievable, all night long.
Another question.
I got one.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm glad you asked the question, Janet. This has been an issue that popped up maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. It didn't come from the neighbor at lot E20, but it actually came from Carol through the staff. I do not know where the neighbor at lot E20 came up with the idea that the adjacent property was to be platted as open space. There's a document that came not from the applicant. I actually think I was gonna take a look at this zoning district map here.
Yeah, and I don't know if you could locate, we're back to the laser pointer
Yeah.
problem, but if you could locate, it's very hard to read the numbers on this. I would love to know exactly what we're talking about.
Of course.
If you look at it in the,
I thought we figured out what it was.
They emailed us sometimes.
We do still need to look, but you
So-
can always read it.
Here, everybody, I'm short, so this isn't gonna work very well. We'll try.
There's the one chart underneath.
Do you see where the skier way, do you see the gray area? Between, at the bottom of the depiction here, okay? Go, what is north on the map, it crosses under the bridge in the pink and then turns white, okay? And as you keep going north, at the far end on the left, okay? That is lot E21. It kind of is, it's like a badge type of design, if
Five-sided.
you will. Yeah, it's 5-sided. That is lot E21. The lot just to the south of that is lot E22. And on the bottom, lower left of E21, it is difficult to see, but it's like it's got a tail that wraps around E22 and E23 and connects with Road C. That small tail is what the neighbor is concerned about.
And it is on that. Should be on that now.
And just to clarify the town staff, that driveway easement, I'm looking at the 2000 East Trade parcel plat, and that driveway easement is present in the original plan. Is town of this opinion?
So what happened here, one, the owner brought this up to Todd and Todd brought it up to Huck as a courtesy to the applicant, knowing that this might come.
Yeah.
And I think Huck was gonna mention something that was in the subdivision preliminary plan, which was just for reference, the layout of the original PUD as approved, which I think is what you're approving to, never platted. But it was just part of the overall PUD submittal at that time that was approved, and it had this layout in it. So that's where it comes from.
Right, and I want to add some confusion to that. It was not submitted by the applicant. We don't know where it came from. It was identified in the packet as Exhibit D, but it was marked as Exhibit G.
It came from the town. I put it in there. It was just for reference for the parties involved to show, here's what they're proposing now, here's what was approved in 2000, whatever.
Yes, so let me try and clarify that and bring it to a point. The boundary of phase 4, okay, stopped at the edge of lot E20. The rest of that area did not get platted, and it's clear that that area is marked as unplatted. It's clear that as far back, I can't remember what the date was, but there's a recorded document from quite a long time ago where that area is shown exactly as you see it today, right? So you'll notice in the letter from Ms. Appleton, she notes that while they understand the zoning map in the town's file is not binding, and we agree with that, right? So the owner of lot E20 is saying, look, I don't know where he may have gotten misled. I don't know who made representations to him. I don't know what representations he relied on. But what I do know is, at the time that he purchased that lot, The area adjacent to him was unplatted, and there was nothing in writing, nor were there any documents in the past that indicated, as far as we know, that indicated that that area would be open space. In fact, there were documents in the record that indicated that that area was gonna be part of the development. There was a map, a skier area easement on the US Forest Service, and if somebody can take a look at that, I emailed that. Carlos, I emailed that to you and Neil and TJ and Jerry this past week with a note of, look, here's this USFS ski area easement map from 2006 that did not show that as open space. So there's clearly been some confusion. I will say, I spoke to the gentleman, and I believe he's online. I spoke to him this past week before he engaged counsel. And I do think that there are some resolutions that are pretty easy to work on here. The attorney suggests moving the easement to the east side of E21, 22, and 23. I don't know if we can zoom in on this map, but if you look at 21, 22, and 23, 22 especially, butts up against an area, the building envelope butts up against an area that is an avalanche zone. So the notion of putting the driveway over there it does not work. Moreover, all that would do is push the building envelope closer to his lot, which doesn't, to me, make a lot of sense either. I think landscaping that easement makes the most sense. I have been up there. I rode my bike up there this past week, took some pictures to get a sense of where the view shed is, or what's the view from the house that's constructed, the foundations in the ground. It's pretty clear to me they're looking up the valley. They're certainly not turning the orientation of the house around and looking back towards where this development will sit. So we're committed to talking with them. But I think that the attorney says it very clearly, that neighbors understand the zoning map in the town's file is not binding because this area has never been platted. And given the history, I think the owner should have known that this area was intended not as open space, but rather to be a driveway area. And I might just say, we're committed to continuing to work with this owner to figure it out. I understand the concerns.
When you're talking about east entry, the potential east side easement, you're talking about that hard switchback on Prospect, not Great Fox Lane above it, correct?
Oh, no, I'm talking about the tail on E21.
Yeah.
Imagine if you flipped it to start at the southeast corner of E21. So that it literally ran from the building envelopes of E21, like essentially next to the avalanche zone, and then came out between 23 and 24. That is my guess at what the attorney is suggesting here. And it just doesn't work. Very good. And again, I think it's got some negative ramifications, right? I mean, when you think about the intensity of use of a driveway, it's just not used that frequently. If someone's a full-time resident, they're gonna drive out in the morning, they're gonna drive in at night, perhaps. Maybe there's some trips during the day. That's probably better than looking out your back window or whatever it may be and seeing your neighbor's house another 20, 30 feet closer to your home, in my opinion. And while I think I can't be viewed as an independent person speaking to that, that makes very logical sense to me. Any other questions on that particular issue?
Other questions?
Does this project, does reactivating this project reactivate for future development parcel G and B and B2?
Not this application.
So that doesn't does that open the door for future projects on those parcels, or can those parcels be applied for even now without this one? That's the purple and then the orange. One at the bottom of Gold Lake, one at the bottom of or one at the top of Gold Lake and Prospect and all that.
This is TJ. I'm not sure who that was posed to. I guess I'll give a first shot and say that, as mentioned, that was not part of this application. Although it's under similar ownership, it would be a future application. That would have to come in and meet the current, either the current requirements at that time or amend them through a similar process.
Thanks.
Other questions?
I assume that current homeowners will still pay the same rate for the water debt buy down, but it will be faster based on more houses included in the pay down.
That's exactly right.
Do you know how many years it'll shorten the pay down?
No.
Cool. Town staff, any concern with the reduction in streetlets, losing a couple feet? Is there any impact to body or emergency vehicles or anything? You know, fire department have some supporters.
I don't think so. I think it's all, and for the TJ, the comments we received from fire district were all positive.
I'm not sure there is.
That
a
is correct.
reduction in streetlights.
Oh,
I think there's a code.
Thought there was a two footer that had.
There's varying.
That's not, I don't think that's been on the road, on the street, right?
That's correct.
Each road meets the requirements for that road type.
Okay, yeah, I thought it needed town council approval for those.
And maintenance wouldn't have any immediate concerns with it because those are metro district roads and not.
God, cool, thanks.
The variance that's being requested from town council is the hammersack.
Yeah.
That's
Gotcha.
the only variance from code.
And that's a great, I understand, why, I guess my question is historically, why have we disfavored hammer stacks?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The discussion of hammer stacks, why were they disfavored in the first place? Do we know? Like, do we know why we need to do the variance? Kind of the planning commission question, if all of these already exist and we're regularly granting variances for them, why did we have a prohibition in the first place?
We're not sure where the 5 lots came from, that you can only have a hammer sack with access on 5 lots. The email from Rick Ems makes it very clear, there's nothing in the International Fire Code that limits the number of lots you can have on a fire access road. So where that 5 lot requirement came from, that's been on the books in the town code for years, I can't answer that. But
Only thing I can maybe think of, and this is just total speculation, is the ability to move snow around in those may be more challenging, but Tyler brought up kind of other issues with that at the same time, that the cul-de-sac is more snow. And it becomes more challenging for storage as that cul-de-sac goes out. So I don't know. I've been part of some of those discussions. I think it's more of a procedural thing for the hammer sack. You know, we're calling it a variance. It's just, you know, for you to allow, but I don't think there's any heartburn on the town side, especially given emergency services has, you know, given it the green light. So I don't know where it originated. It's just been in there and it does exist. And that's why the request is being made. And we've gone through all the proper channels to make sure that there are no issues with, you know, granting it.
we checked with the fire district, they've had no issues with the existing hammer sacks in Prospect as far as emergency service.
Great, maybe consider that in your next zoning update.
It might be a good opportunity to correct it. Update.
Go ahead.
I have a question about road impacts and the traffic study. Traffic study is 5 years old. Or do you have an opinion on that as staff?
I do not, I came into this project the final plan, so.
More preliminary.
I'm sorry, preliminary. Prospect. Preliminary.
Does anybody else have an opinion on that? 5-year-old traffic information, transportation information.
I'm a little concerned about that.
Yeah, we got North Village that
Yeah, with the village going on, it compounds.
I mean, is there a standard for timeliness of traffic study?
Well, if the application changes, then certainly you'd want to take a look at if there was a substantial increase in the number of lots. From when the traffic study was initiated and completed, but if it hasn't changed in that time frame, I would assume that analysis based upon the project would still be filled.
And Mayor, Councilman, if I may, I think Mr. Hugstep can address this in more detail, but I believe we did ask the traffic engineer to take a look at that data and advise us as to whether he thought it needed to be updated. And do you want to, can you speak to that?
But that traffic report was created by Fox Tuttle, which I believe is the same consultant that was used by North Village Associates when they were going through their project. The traffic engineer that was working on it was very familiar with the North Village project as well, at the densities that were proposed back then, right? So I'm pretty certain that you look at that traffic study, it takes into account North Village. Fox Tuttle's done a significant amount of work up here. They may even be the traffic engineer for the town. I don't know that for certain. But the point of that is that both of those projects, you all heard Crockett talking about, and you all were talking about North Village being 4 years in the mix, or 4 years in process. That's exactly what this project has been pretty much since then as well. You might remember we had a concept plan meeting way long ago. So I think that if you look at that report, it actually takes the data that it used or the projections that it used would be current, even considering North Village.
Yeah, I'd be curious to put that information.
Was that based upon 1,700 units or upon 260?
Very candid. You know, Neil, I don't know. And without looking at the report, I just wouldn't know.
That's a huge difference.
I got it. Hold on.
I think if you all don't mind, if you have other questions, we might,
Well,
from that one, we can take a look
There
at
are
this and get a
some
little
questions.
better
Go ahead,
data.
Am I correct in understanding that y'all are saying y'all will resolve the sewer line issue with the water district before final?
No.
I like to play it.
Yeah, but thank you. The letter that came from, or the email or memo that came from the Water and Sanitation District just at the end of April, it just appeared in the packet. We had not seen that before the packet came out. I believe what that says is, I'm gonna summarize. It says, please fix the issue, right? Before the town issues any building permits, or maybe I'll turn that around. Town, please don't issue any building permits before we get this issue fixed. Was effectively what I translated that to mean. And I believe
But
that's
there's already been some buildings going on, right?
not in this development, no.
Oh, okay.
No, there's a lot of development going on Upper Prospect right now. I'm sorry, on the upper end of Prospect, but it's Prospect Drive, already platted, the 4th phase. So I think what you're going to see, my assumption is that what you're gonna see is, I assume that this, and Jerry could answer this, the same kind of condition applied to the North Village approval for final plan. So my guess is both those applicants are gonna start working with the Water and Sanitation District to get a handle on that issue very shortly. Makes sense.
So
But
we have
not,
a result before final. plan?
I don't, I wish, but I don't hold out that much hope.
What if we're staff resolved anything with the water district on procedures? At this point, or is that still in discussion?
I would say no, and, I'm a little reluctant to speak to this here, because I think most of it would be speaking on behalf of the district, and that's really not my place.
Right.
Yeah.
I have outstanding questions for the district myself. And they've not been easy to get a hold of.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how existing customers will be affected, or new customers will be the ones picking up that.
I have a certain guess in that. I can probably answer for him for you.
All right, let's not speak for the water district. I do wish they were here more often, but,
Returning.
so are you still, do you have an answer to the pending question, or should I move on to additional questions while you're looking at it?
I
got
think we
some
should
others.
move on to additional
Okay.
questions. So,
I saw 10,000 square feet referenced in other places. I see with the PU guide amendment in our packet, but my question is 8,500 square feet is the biggest house that will be built there. 8,500 square feet or 25% of the lot, whichever is less.
yes, that was a condition of approval that was recommended and applied by planning commission.
Yep.
And that applies in the instance when you combine multiple lots. we had said you can, when you combine multiple lots, you can have up to, whatever the footprint could have been up to a maximum of 10,000. And the planning commission said, no, that's too big, we want 8,500. And so that is the current proposed language that would be incorporated into the PUD guide.
But that's for all that's for all houses, not houses on two lots, right? 8,500 square feet is the biggest house you can build, so that's not.
That was specific to lot consolidations.
Yeah.
Just to combine lots.
And that's consistent with our code for lot consolidations.
So what's the one lot thing going back?
If I may, the maximum on. Do you see the orange area?
Yes.
Okay, there are pink lots to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, those are E47 through E42 through E47. Those are a maximum of 10,000 square feet. Okay, a single lot, not a combined lot. And then if you look at
Building envelope.
No, lot.
residential construction, I'm sorry, residential construction, you could build a home up to 10,000 square feet on those lots. And then if you look at 48, E48, 49, and 50, and again, you see the lighter green, it says reserved parcel G loop reconfiguration. Okay, just below that is E48, E49, E50. Two of those can be 9,000 square feet. One of those can be 10,000 square feet. So I want to make sure we're clear. I believe the question was specifically, we're kind of dealing with two issues, right? Number one is what's the maximum square footage of residential construction on any individual lot? And then number two, what's the maximum square footage on a combined lot? And the 8,500 relates to combined lots, and it was just a cleanup in the PUD guide.
Why would it be less for a combined lot than a single lot?
Because that would be consistent with the rest of the prospect development. That's what's in the PUD.
That still doesn't answer.
Yeah.
Still,
Precedent aside.
Why is this guy?
What's the logic? Is there a common logic amongst municipalities or town managers or development directors to why that would be? Because we have all sorts of fun precedents here.
Well, there's only a specific number of lots within Upper Prospect that allow 10,000 square feet. The other ones are much less square footage.
And is that?
No, that's fine, that's a certain number of lots have 10, but ways less, so yeah.
Well, is the 10,000 square foot a result of 25% of the lot? Or 10,000 square feet maximum for the lot? What's the language on that?
If you give me a minute, I can pull up the first amended and restated.
Well, I'm just trying to.
What's the
sense
question?
of it.
I might know.
If it's a quarter, 25%, you'd have to have a 1 acre.
Right,
lot,
but how many
10,000
units did it
square
have?
feet, Right, or the lesser, it's either 25% or whatever specifically
Right.
identified. I think within the amended PUD guide, they specify 10,000 square feet for these set number of lots, not the 25%.
Janet, what was your question again?
That would make it out.
Why?
You combine two lots, you only get 8,500, but there's other lots, one. you
A
get
single
10,000.
lot, you can have.
That's correct.
So that's specific.
I can explain a little bit of that, I think. I can help give you some clues. On the north side of Prospect Drive, the extended Prospect Drive, do you see where the little, the half loop is, if you will? As you're coming in from the white area, you cross into the pink, and right there is that little half area, right? The little half turnaround area. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The lots on the north side of Prospect Drive, E34 through E40, really through E39. So the first 6 lots there are pretty small in size. Okay, and that's because again of that shift of the road to the north where it currently exists. Keep it in the place where it currently exists. So that's where I think you're more likely to see lot combinations, and you'll notice that those lots aren't super deep, right? And each of those lots is capped at 5,000 square feet. So the logic from the planning commission was, look, if you combine 2 of those lots, we don't want to see a 10,000 square foot house on those particular lots. That was their logic. So let's reduce it down to 8,500.
And so very explicitly, under their amended and restated guidelines, maximum residential size requirements. So on lots E42 through E47 and E48 through E50 shall not exceed 10,000 square feet. And it says the determination of which lot amongst E48 through E50 shall be restricted to 10,000 square feet shall be made by the Upper Prospect Homeowners Association. So they weigh into that. The maximum building size of each residence on the following lots shall not exceed 9,000 square feet. E48 through E50, so that's thrown into that mix. The maximum building of each residence on the following lot shall not exceed 5,000 square feet, E34 through E39. And then the maximum building size of each residence on E21 through E32, 40, and 41 shall not exceed the lesser of 25% of the total lot area, or 8,500 square feet. So they have
So there are some single lots that they restrict.
so 5,000 square feet.
Those are the smaller lots. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
The smaller ones north of Prospect Drive, those are all limited to 5,000 square feet.
It's a function of the lot size and views. And
Correct.
And I think with the planning, so the code, general code for when you combine single family lots says the shall not exceed 25% of the total created lot size or 8,500 square feet, whichever is less. In our single family district, there's only one lot where you get larger than that. And I think in this case, you have more instances of that, and that's the disconnect you're seeing here with that. Is the planning commission was pulling from the existing code, because that's what they do, but that existing code is set up for our single family residential district where you don't run into this issue. But now we're realizing there's a disconnect with that here where we are with this provision, but I think what Neil just read off.
The variety of,
covers it.
yeah, plus the concern of one of the commissioners, planning commissioners, was because that's what the requirement in the rest of the prospect is the 8,500 or 25%. Trying to align it with the rest of the development. And the town code also.
We've gotten some public comment on skier easements and skier access. Could you sort of summarize that for me? I hate to get into colors since we're having trouble, but could you summarize skier access and easement for this?
We can absolutely do that. Do you want me to answer the traffic study question first or do that one now?
No, please traffic study first.
Okay, so I'm looking at a traffic study dated October 17th, 2022. That's in the packet. I don't know if that's the same one that you were referencing. And it does say that it takes into account North Village. And it includes year 2026 background volumes. And the comment by the traffic engineer here is, note that the anticipated growth assumed in this traffic impact study is assumed to be conservative and likely overestimating traffic throughout Mount Crested Butte.
What page is that?
Sorry?
What page is that?
That is page 7 of the traffic study. I don't know what page it is in your packet.
That's all right, I go by the links anyway.
So that's the traffic one. Now your question is about the skier easements.
Yes, please.
I think that we have somebody else on our team that is more knowledgeable than me about the skier easements, so I'd like to ask them to come and answer that question.
Okay.
Okay. I think it's important for everybody when thinking about these skier easements to understand the topography of this land. When you look at Prospect Drive as it continues from where it's unpaved and proposed to be paved all the way through the far cul-de-sac that's adjacent to future parcel B. That area is almost like the crown of the ridge there, right? So anybody coming from below on Lower Prospect Drive, it seems unlikely to me that they would be going uphill, right? To get onto the ski area. However,
Except the folks at the very top, I imagine would.
They could.
go up and over
Yeah.
instead of going down to go length.
They certainly could. They could also ski over maybe to East River or something like that. I don't know. I think those patterns, I'm not familiar with the way that the terrain looks in the winter right now. If anybody's actually using that area to cross with skins or what have you, I don't know. But notwithstanding all of that, when you look on this area, you'll see the brighter, almost reddish little strips. They look like little rectangles, okay? Those are between F1 and E50, F8 and F9, F12 and 13, E41, E42. And then you'll notice that there's an area that doesn't quite look the same between F23 and E32, okay? That area was not carved out as a tract, but the other five that I mentioned are carved out as tracts, meaning they are literally, they're separate, small little tracts, little lots, okay? Can't develop on them, but they will effectively be open to the public to move through those, okay? The applicant is aware that there's a lot of recreational traffic up here, summer and winter. And I think it would be foolish to not contemplate that kind of movement in the future. So those areas will act as corridors to get people onto trails in the summer and onto the ski area in the winter. The areas in all the prior phases of Prospect, they have what they identify as skier easements along lot lines. And again, I can't tell you how intense the usage is there. I can't tell you from prior experience. I don't think it's that intense. All of those are disconnected from this particular development area. So those users, as for instance, could come up, and then our plan would be they could use these darker areas to access the recreational areas or get back from the recreational areas to their lot. Okay, I'm assuming too, and then because the road's going to be paved, they're probably going to be using the road quite a bit as well, right? And that just makes sense. If you're coming from the umbrella bar, you're going to have to, let's say you're trying to get to your house on Lower Prospect, and you're going to ski across this area, you're going to have to walk across the road and then use one of those two little tracks that are in red or reddish to get to your property. Does that make sense to everybody? That is the way that we are planning on handling those easements. Questions about that?
But you're saying between 22 F 23 and E32, for instance, is an actual tract of land?
It is a tract of land, meaning it's not a separately deeded property, right? It'll be a part of F23, but it will be subject to show on the plat as. That's going to be an area. I don't know the specific language that it's going to contain. Excuse me, but effectively that's the intent. Okay, I know that there's a homeowner, and I believe he's on Zoom, that had some concerns about that, and I know Justin had spoken to him earlier about it. In prior versions of this similar document, we just hadn't highlighted that little strip, but the contemplation has always been there that that's what that's going to be.
Yeah. And then the little parking area, that's just as the pavement ends, does the parking area that currently exists, does that go away? It's hard to.
Yeah.
Look at it on
Hard
there.
to figure out where that is. I believe that that's on the north end of E31 and right there where Road C intersects.
E20.
E20.
Yeah, the gentleman.
Oh, I don't think that's in his lot. It's adjacent to his lot.
It's very.
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah. Tyler's saying it's right there at that lot. I've got some pictures from going up to look at E20 this past week. It's definitely off of E20's lot, but it's right in that area. That area is not contemplated to remain.
Cause I mean, just, you mentioned that is, you asked about the intensity of usage, and that parking lot is often full. It's only 5 cars or 6 cars, but it's often full up there, and so that's how those folks.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways that folks are accessing that, is they're actually driving up to the top of Prospect and parking there.
And I think that the way I classify that is, I wouldn't go so far as to say that that's trespassing, but I think that there's nothing there that says, look, you have permission to park here, or this has been platted, or will be platted as a parking area. Keep in mind too, that one of the reasons that we put a cul-de-sac at the end where parcel G is because our expectation is when you see development here, that use, that type of use is gonna shift to the end of that road. Right,
Continue all the way up.
all the way down. So what I mean is the furthest, not the furthest left, but where the road terminates at the white, right there. Our expectation is that probably that's gonna come. It could even be that spills out onto parcel G.
If people are parking there, they'll be ticketed.
Okay, well,
So you can't park in the cul-de-sac.
so what's the difference?
But you can't, I mean, where they're currently parking is in Prospect Road right away.
Yeah.
They're parking on Prospect.
I just know that we
today.
do now have an agreement with Prospect to write parking tickets.
Okay,
I can make assumptions as to why people in that one area aren't ticketed, but on a cul-de-sac, people will most likely be ticketed.
Yeah.
So to say that it would shift there, or people could get ticketed.
let me
These
try to
are-
refine that a little bit to say that, you can see there's no cul-de-sac
Yeah.
in the current area, right? And so I think it remains to be seen what will happen at the end there.
Yeah, these are Metro District roads, but there's an agreement with the Metro District where the town enforces our parking regulations in Prospect. It's only 2 or 3 years old. So that's what Tiffany was referring to.
Yeah, okay.
And our codes don't allow parking in the right of way, which includes.
Includes what people are parking there.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, sorry, I forgot about public hearing script. All right, so I'm gonna close the public comment and begin the council deliberation. So, I'm now closing the public testimony portion of the public hearing for both applications at 8:41, and the town council will discuss the applications and entertain separate motions. So discussion.
That was a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. Makes sense to digest, for at least for myself, and pick this up at another meeting.
I always struggle with 800+ page packets in general. I find that they're hard to absorb. So I do. Would that be a motion to table? Or a motion to continue?
Until when?
It would.
Yeah, there's the suggestion that I move to continue the other Prospect PUD preliminary PUD plan
And, I mean, agenda.
to whatever day.
And I'll second that with the assumption that the date will be.
Can I make a
Right.
suggestion?
Yeah, let's let Jerry jump in. Please, Jerry.
Before Carolyn makes maybe a similar suggestion, let me make this suggestion. If it's gonna be continued, it's quite likely that there will be questions from the council that they'll want the applicant to answer. And so there'll be additional testimony that you're frankly gonna wanna have if you do continue it for a couple weeks, because council's gonna have looked at the rest of that rather long packet and digested, as was indicated, what has been said tonight. So even though the mayor closed the hearing, the motion.
I actually just closed the public testimony portion,
Oh, perfect.
Jerry. I have not closed the hearing.
Perfect. So maybe I'm interrupting Janet and shouldn't have. Wanted to make sure that the motion was to continue the hearing.
Yeah.
If that was the case, then I'm good.
That was the case.
Sorry,
That's what I seconded.
sorry to both of you. Thank
I
you.
can make the motion to continue, if that's what you guys want.
Well, I mean, that's what Jerry wants. Is that what we want? I mean, we're gonna vote on it, but does anybody have a different opinion on it?
I think with regards to, conversation we had earlier tonight at council, like taking the initial steps as slow as we need to feel like we know exactly where things stand before we move forward, it's a great way to not feel like we're getting pushed to the next step, so to speak.
So
Mayor.
I think. Did somebody?
Oh, if I may, I was just gonna ask that if the continuance is because the council feels that it needs additional information, if you it would be great if you would specify what that additional information is so that the applicant can
Absolutely.
prepare it and provide it in the interim between now and whatever date you continue it to. So
I think
just
it's more having time to process everything we've heard tonight.
We actually don't want more information.
Oh, I'm trying to get just what we already got.
I got you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second, so we do have a
I
motion.
didn't put a date in it, so I will move to continue the Upper Prospect PUD preliminary PUD plan to, May 21st, 2024.
So further public hearing. Yes,
Okay.
so motion, we have a motion from Janet and a second from Dwayne to continue the public hearing on the Upper Prospect and Mount Crescent View preliminary PUD plan, major alteration of Prospect PUD and preliminary subdivision plan. So again, the motion is to continue the public hearing on this matter until our next meeting. Any further discussion?
Roman,
Yes.
Dwayne,
Yes.
Alec,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Mayor Kimpin.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that if there's opposition, it's just to fill out the process in one night.
All right, thank you all for your presentation and your time this evening.
Nicholas, real quick, so the 3 items we added to the agenda, you want to do those before resolution 6?
I think that's what I said, so let's just stick to it, yep.
Makes as much sense to me.
So the first one of those is the homestead contract matter. Jerry, you wanna lead us off on this one?
That's me. Carlos, does the council have the little handout?
Yes, the option agreement, the assignment and the consent to assignment are in the hands of the council.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Jerry, let's pause just for 2 minutes here. We got people leaving the room and everything.
It's good.
As much as it does pain me to see it.
Hurry up, Howard. It's late. I'm just kidding.
We're actually.
Yeah, I was just.
All right, Jerry, we're back. We're ready to go.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Council, we make great progress on the homestead project. You'll be pleased to know that the closing for the town to convey the property to Bywater is now set for tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And we're going through the closing documents. We figured out some wrinkles today. Huck's still in the room and he was helpful in helping me get the title company to back off on some property taxes they thought were due and owing on the property. Of course, the town's been in ownership of the property and thusly tax exempt since June of 2023, and we got that figured out. So thank you, Huck, for helping with that. So we're making real progress, and tomorrow's a big day in the evolution of the homestead project because Bywater will then come into ownership of the property. They've already entered into contracts that would sell those lots to individual buyers, of course, contingent on them getting title of the property and building the houses. And this is the next step in that process. Also, as you know, one of the things that has been of real importance to the town throughout this process has been protection for the town in the event there are problems. And I go back to one of the themes that we talked about when the development agreement originally was put together, which is what we need here is something we didn't have before, which is control of the land if this falls apart and money to be able to finish the project. And we have both of those things. And the control of the land, now that we're selling it to Bywater, is in the form of an option that if there's a default, either by Bywater or the bank declares a default on Bywater's loan, that the town would be able to reacquire that property. And the option agreement that's in front of you, one of the 3 documents that will require your attention, is a evolved form of the exhibit that was an exhibit to the development agreement that you approved some time ago. But it's now been reviewed by the bank, it's Alpine Bank, and they've made some corrections and changes, and I've asked for some things in the option agreement, and they've done those. And so the key aspect of the option agreement is just as I've described. If there's a lender foreclosure and there's default under the agreement, then the town has the ability to exercise the option and get the property back, and then use the performance bond to finish the project. So much of our time we spend planning for bad things that then don't happen. But of course, if you don't plan for them, you're not prepared for them. And so the option agreement is in fine form. I don't have any concerns with it now that it's been reviewed by the bank and they've acceded to just a few corrections I had. But remembering, it started with a draft that was an attachment to our development agreement to begin with. So that's the first document, and when we're ready in a minute, I'll suggest a motion where we can just take care of all these at once. The second document you have is this collateral assignment of contract. It's not something the town signs, but the town signs a consent to this happening. Collateral assignment was mentioned in the original option draft attached to the agreement, our development agreement. But let me explain that what this is the bank getting Joel and Bywater to assign or make a collateral assignment of collateral, more security for the bank. Anytime the bank's gonna lend $10 million, it wants all the security it can. So it gets a position on the property subject to our option, and it gets all the other things banks get out of you when they lend you money. And this is one of those things, and they want the ability to be able to take over the project if Bywater defaults. And that's this collateral assignment. I asked for and got language in that assignment at the top of I think it's about the 3rd page, section 2.2. What I didn't want was the bank declares a default, decides to take over the right to build the project. And whether or not the town has exercised the option, the bank is now in the position of Bywater building the project. And they're not going to do that themselves, likely. They'll assign that right to some contractor to do it. But I wanted to make sure we went through such a process, picking Bywater, wanted to make sure it was a contractor that was acceptable to the town. And that's why I asked for and got the language at the top of that page 2.2, that the town has to consent to the qualifications of that third party to, as I've written it, capably perform the then remaining obligations under the contract. So that's, again, additional security. That agreement is just between Bywater and the bank, but you'll notice now, turning to the last document in this little set, it's really the very last page, and that's a consent to the assignment, because of course, before it can be Bywater can assign a contract to the bank or assign them rights in the contract, the town has to consent. I believe it's appropriate for the town to consent, and I recommend that we do. This is something that is necessary for Bywater to be able to get financing, and we want them to get financing. We want them to succeed. But you'll notice the last paragraph of that consent document has the same language about protecting the town, such that if there is in fact the potential for the bank to assign its rights under the contract, the town gets to approve that third party contractor effectively. These are things that are contemplated, not surprising, in the context of acquiring construction financing that Bywater has to do, and they have to do this to be able to get that money from their bank. It's an appropriate set of arrangements. It protects the bank, but I've arranged for it to also protect the town to the extent the town has the right to intervene, really, or be a player in this financing arrangement that is really mostly Bywater and the bank's game. But it implicates the town, and there are these few places where I've arranged that the town's interests are protected. That's my thumbnail sketch. Happy to answer any questions, and then when you're ready, I'll suggest a motion.
It's very clear over me.
Agree with that.
I think, that, you know, it's good news that Bywater's, you know, on the edge of getting their money. They need this money. Obviously, that's a key event in their lives here. But with this money in hand, they'll be able to not only close on the property from the town, but they'll clearly close on their loan from the bank and have that money to begin building things. And as you know, they're up there already in the ground. So if there aren't any questions, the proper motion would be to approve the approve the option agreement between Bywater and the town, and in connection therewith, also the consent to assignment of the collateral assignment of contract, and authorize the mayor and the town clerk to execute the same.
So moved.
I'll second, motion from Dwayne and a second from myself to approve a Bywater option agreement and consent to assignment as stated by town attorney Jerry Dahl. Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Tiffany?
Sorry, Alec,
Yes.
Roman,
Yes.
Steve.
Yep.
Janet. Yep. Dwayne,
Yes.
Mayor Campbell.
Yes. All right, next item is a proclamation for Mental Health Awareness Month. Can't find it here in my stack at the moment, but Carlos, would you want to?
Yeah, quick intro, the organization, they're spacing them right now. They had sent the mayor, you know.
See the state of mind?
That sounds right, yeah. This was last minute, came up yesterday, so I'll give you the backstory as concisely as possible. They sent this to the mayor at the beginning of April, you know, asking to make this proclamation. The mayor forwarded it to me, we talked about it, we're like, sure, we can do that. So we just over a month ago, it got missed, it wasn't in the packet. So it's in the packet, it's basically just a proclamation from the town stating May as Mental Health Awareness Month. And I mean, it's as straightforward as that. You might ask, why were all the green lights up in April? I think it was April, maybe it was March. And the reason why is I think traditionally May is Mental Health Awareness Month, but why CV State of Mind is not CV State of Mind. Why CV State of Mind does it in April is because locally, when you hit April and the off season, that's when we see an uptick in those types of incidents.
Yeah, that seems logical to me. And then also everybody's left their lights up anyway. So here we are in May, but it's still up.
We're doing a new level play right now.
All right, so looking for a motion to approve this proclamation and you need to sign it.
Yeah, motion to approve the proclamation of the town council of the town of Mount Crested Butte recognizing the month of May as Mental Health Awareness Month and authorizing, not approving, thank you, authorizing Mayor Nicholas Hampton to sign.
And it's the Tri-County Health Network.
So a motion from Alec and a second from Roman to approve the proclamation of the town council of the town of Mount Crested Butte recognizing the month of May as Mental Health Awareness Month. Any further discussion? Tiffany?
Dwayne,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Roman.
Yes?
Alec,
Yes.
Steve.
Yep.
Mayor Campbell.
Yes. Next item is a request from the store committee for funding for to bring additional law enforcement, I should say, additional Forest Service law enforcement officers to the Crested Butte area for 3 to 4 busy weekends during the upcoming summer. And I believe the ask is, we don't know exactly.
There isn't an ask. I asked, what is the ask? And there wasn't one. They're just trying to raise the $10,000. I can say last night, the CB Town Council approved 3,000. And there is a pledge from the Crested View Land Trust that see if I can word this well. The land trust has said is if the towns pledge $1,000 or more, they will pledge $500 themselves, so.
For each
Both
1,000?
town, so 1,000 total, so if each town pledged $1,000 or more, they pledge $500 each. The county has also pledged $1,000, it's not just the municipalities that are the ask is of, so that's just some additional background, but they're just trying to raise $10,000 to pay for it. There is no specific ask, but that's what they're seeking.
We don't know what the city of Gunnison did.
I do not.
I can try to offer some brief context, as this is a story committee.
Yeah, and I can provide a little bit more of why it's kind of an add-on, is this, Nick sent this out to me on Friday, I think it was the 26th, which was the day, my last day of vacation. And I didn't catch up on my emails to get to this request until I think it was last Thursday, which was past the packet deadline. So that's why it's a late ad. They're looking, not necessarily seeking action tonight, just to see where we stand, if we'd be willing to contribute and a potential amount. If we're there, we, by all means, let's get there, but I think he is planning on pursuing that program, and he just needs to know where he stands with it, as best as you're willing to offer up this evening. So that's why I initially offered it up for May 21st, but given some urgency on their part, I said I'll add it to the agenda.
So, sort of along the lines with Carlos, this hit my email on the 22nd when I was out of town. It slid down my box, but, this is an outcome from some of those strategic plan conversations. Impacting user behavior is part of that. Trying to get the word out through organic and paid advertising and whatnot. That was sort of a subcommittee topic. Pushback from TAP was that people are getting information overload, they just don't pay attention anymore. You can put up more signs, it's not gonna work. Enforcement has always been important as far as people wanting it, but you can't just deputize Steve or anybody. You have to be you have to be a cop, you have to go through the whole thing. Sure. The resources aren't there to pay for it from the Forest Service, of course. It's purported that as these paid funds from camping start to really roll, that will help start to fund things like this, but you need a certain amount of resources at these camp areas to even charge funds, so it's a long run out process. So this came up, it was something that our commissioner, Puckett, really pushed for, was super vocal about. She should be recognized for that. And this is one of the things that came out of it, and it's a unique opportunity, and it should have a pretty substantial impact, because there's one guy.
We should kind of keep that low key, maybe not.
There's one guy
Staggered.
to cover the entire GMUG, and he writes like more tickets than like all of his peers.
Right.
Combined.
Not surprised.
But he's only one person, and so this is specific to our area, and it should have a pretty substantial impact. And I mean, how many times have we all been in the situations that you're upset that you're seeing this thing happen, and no one's around to do anything about it?
So what's the appetite for the level of contribution?
$3,001.
I was gonna say 3,000, but I like yours better.
3,002, Bob.
I'm on board with the 3,000. It's, I mean.
Nobody put the extra $1 for such a reason. I just think it's a good number.
As we're talking about numbers, I will add a couple things, is these types of things, grants, what it is, typically comes out of the community grants fund. And we're trying to get away from these kind of ad hoc requests. If this was more of a if it was something other than a similar public type entity, I might have said, come back to the process, but knowing what I know about this and it being store, I made the exception here, and also know that any contribution here will put us over our budgeted amount for community grants, but at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. It's not an issue, but I just want to make you aware of
We'll
all
put
those.
it over our amount. We haven't done our community grants.
For
yet.
2024, you did. You budgeted 130,000 for 2024. That was set like in October, November of last year.
Okay.
And then you awarded 131,787.
So that was like, what, 1% of our
2%.
income or whatever?
I think it was 2%.
So can we take money from somewhere else?
You can do it. It's not gonna
Put us over
affect the
budget.
bottom line for the town. At the end of the day, you just want your revenues to exceed your expenses, so this is not, but it'll just.
This
be
is more a
reflect-
process thing that you're talking.
Yeah, I
about.
just want you to know, at the end of the day, it'll just show in community grants, we're over budget, but,
Well,
it's
again,
all
I-
fungible stuff to a certain
Yeah,
degree. so-
and I do think this one is different. I do think it's part of what's missing out there. I don't wanna get into it, like some of the things I've seen that have made me crazy out there, but,
Be here for
there are people who like deserve the ticket and everything that comes with it, and maybe we had some more people than that. People would build their bonfire in the middle of the flower meadow.
Yeah.
There.
We're having the
So-
ADM festival back there. What's that?
Saturation controls, is that?
Oh, I didn't know.
Yes.
Sorry.
So what do you guys think? Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm into it because this is just like, this lower step is so mind blowing that I think this has to be a catalyst for that. I do like that we're getting user data, the accurate detail of all contacts, major instance. We should know after the summer, like, oh my God, this is 10 times worse than we thought, or, and understand what type of thing is going to be necessary for the future. So I'm all for it. I was serious about 3001, but I'm flexible.
I move to approve. $3,000. $3,000 to support the Sustainable Tourism and Outdoor Recreation Committee's law enforcement saturation patrol program.
Second.
That was $3,000 even, okay.
We have a motion from Roman and a second from Alec to approve $3,000 for saturation controls. Any further discussion? Good one.
Roman,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Wayne,
Yeah.
Steve,
Yep.
Alec,
Yes.
Mayor Campbell.
Yes. All right, next thing is resolution number 6, series 2024, a resolution of the town council of the town of Mount Crescent Beach, Colorado, establishing an electronic bicycle rebate program for approved town residents for 2024. Tiffany.
Okay, so after our last work session, I basically took what you guys told me to put in the resolution in the exhibit A. It's in front of you and you guys can approve it as is, you can make changes. It's up to you guys how you want to handle it. And I started the program off as you guys requested of $10,000. And this is, Roman, since you weren't here last time, this is for the regular Mount Crescent Butte e-bike, it's not for the low income.
Right, and I did listen to the work session and I thought it was a great conversation and good points were brought up. So after listening to it, I'm not gonna rehash all that. I'll just let you know where I'm at after the conversation you guys had. I personally like the no full suspension, restriction. Heard good conversation about that here. But I don't really see people, I don't see that being in line with getting people off the The roads, I would like to see either lowering the amount per bike or putting an AMI cap on it, because even good cargo bikes aren't $5,000, they're like maybe $3,000. If you make 400% AMI, do you need $500 from the town of Mount Pleasant Group? So, that's kind of where I'm at on it. So,
Roman,
So
I'm
you wanna
sorry.
change the maximum rental retail price to what?
I'd like to either talk about lowering the price of bike amount, like lowering it below $5,000, or talk about an AMI cap on who can use the program.
Well, the grant that we've gotten from the state has the AMI caps on,
Right.
and this was to try and cover above the cap.
Right, but I'm trying not to give $500 to somebody who makes $3 million a year.
So you're saying it could even be 200%?
Yeah, 200% of AMI or something like that.
Definitely.
Yes, not like
There's
110, but like, trying to capture that group, but not wasting money on somebody that doesn't need it.
What's training at 66? And change is 100%.
That sounds right, but
So 40. Let's see. I mean, I could get behind like 130 or 140%. That's somebody who makes like $100,000 a year.
What were the numbers from the state? And do you remember?
The cap is 100% AMI.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but
100% gets you 1,200, 80% AMI gets you 1,500 for a state program.
That was 1,015.
I think you're right,
Oh,
hold on. And hey, Roman, real quick.
Yes.
You said, and I'm tired, so bear with
Yeah,
me.
I agree.
We did not say no full suspension e-bikes on the town's program.
No, you guys talked a lot about it.
But
and
we
it
did
seemed
not
like
say
half the
no.
people
Okay.
were like, yeah, I think we should have the restriction, and then somebody would say, I don't think we do, and then somebody else was like.
well,
yeah,
I think we
change
thought
it.
that the cost cap took care of most of that.
Yeah.
That is.
So I see your point, but I guess it seems like it assumes like I was gonna buy this e-bike anyway. I don't need the money, I don't need an incentive to buy it. I get that situation, but I also wonder to what extent someone who is quite flush with cash, but wasn't gonna buy an e-bike, and then they see like, oh, I could get, but not gonna go buy an e-bike. So that's the part I don't. That's the part I see is a little bit different than what you were saying. I think I kind of like it the way it is. But I'm also open to an AMI cap or something like that. I would like to, I guess, I'd like the AMI cap to be a little higher.
Sure, I'd be down for that, and just maybe.
But then that also puts although Tiffany's gonna be doing it for the state program anyway, right, Tiffany? Looking at people's AMI, I was just gonna say that puts some more work on you, but it's the same thing you're doing for the rest of the program, right?
Just regarding the AMI conversation, like.
And then is everyone gonna have to then, so you know you're way below the threshold, but then are you still gonna have to provide your?
We'll always say that's it.
I think that is a little bit of a downside.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I kind of looked at it as not having the cap on this program because it's such a nominal amount that's reserved for refilling the pot. So, again, I'm kind of flex on this one. I like the idea of having an outlet for people who just don't want to pull out their tax returns, but still would like to, I'm more prone to lower the total purchase amount and limit full suspension. I would prefer that approach over AMI based for our program.
So maybe $4,000 and no AMI restriction?
But no full suspension. And that would,
That's what I would prefer,
I'm not opposed to looking at the numbers from last year. How many full suspensions were there? 3 or 2?
No, there's a few more than that.
Okay.
I'm gonna say 5 to 8.
Okay,
not many.
so I don't think we're gonna ostracize a huge base of our residents who are like, yeah.
And those were probably the $10,000 ones.
No, they weren't quite that much. Here, bear with me.
Anybody ever,
But
And it's
still,
without-
that aside, like, you know, if what Steve just said, it works, if it is, we need to look it up. Yeah.
$1,000 is for 80% of AMI, 1,500 is for 100% of AMI.
that seems
The
bad.
full suspension bikes were like 5, 6, 7, 8. There might have been one for under 5, but not much.
Just to clarify, I think the AMI was backwards there. I think 1,500 is for people who make 80% or less.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Unless you make-
my,
Yeah,
desire,
yeah, that,
to not exclude full suspension bikes is because the only retailer, in Mount Crescent View only sells suspension bikes, and by eliminating them, we essentially, cut off the only, local business, from being able to participate in, I thought that, in the spirit of full disclosure, I bought.
Yeah, I heard in the work session that you said you just ride it around, like you don't even really take it on the trails.
I don't.
It-
Because if I'm gonna go out on the trails, I'm on my dirt bike.
Right.
I gotta
I
throw.
definitely hung my hat on supporting the local retailer. I fought hard to get the highest rebate as possible for them, but now I kind of feel like we're crafting the program to accommodate a real retailer rather than the intent of the program.
the retail reserves the right to bring in cruisers, clients, and whatever.
So that they could adjust about literally in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So if we leave it as it is at the 5,000, we're really not, we're really cutting out the suspension bikes.
You can get a full
Well, not
suspension
really,
bike for
not really.
under 5,000.
Yeah, I mean, I've
They're
seen
just-
someone the other day for 3,000.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, components, different story, but.
Right, yeah.
It is technically, it is technically a full suspension. I don't really, if somebody's passionate about it, I could go either way. I'm not committed to it, but looking at last year's numbers and such, and knowing that we were gonna review it to look at fiscal flexibility and understand, I don't have really a stake in it too much. If somebody's zoning on that.
If you want to keep the level the same, I would throw out a no suspension and keep it $5,000
Yeah, I see what
or
you're
$4,000 and
each one of them
Yeah,
meets
yeah.
the end goal.
ish, yeah.
I'm fine calling it no full, that's just me though.
Calling it what?
Calling it, saying no full suspension, but leaving that higher price point. Because there are crazy cargo bikes that they're starting to come out that are starting to push that fringe that are like, it's ridiculous.
Really?
Yeah, 35 is like a sweet spot on
Yeah.
those for like a legit big ass.
Yeah, I agree. I like the higher amount rather than allowing suspension.
All right,
Okay.
cool. I got a motion then?
I move to, move to approve resolution number 6, series 24. While adding the, what is that, adding the eligibility requirement that the bicycle cannot be full suspension. So how are you gonna word that?
All right, motion from Steve and a second from Roman to approve resolution number 6, series 2024 with the amendment mentioned by Steve. Any further discussion?
I totally forgot one thing. I just want to make sure in case I missed it. We cannot piggyback this on the states, can we?
No,
No, and I think it says it in there. doesn't
Okay,
it?
so I was trying to find it, so.
it says it in the state's rebate. I'm almost positive it says you can't piggyback it.
So this would point to that anyway.
Is that the state overruling home rule? Yeah,
No, it's their money.
it's 9:20.
Yes.
That's so much.
It's their money, so I think.
That's discussion for next week.
Yeah, like, do you want to work that out?
No,
No.
Okay.
okay, Tiffany.
Alec,
Yes.
Dwayne,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes,
Steve,
Yes.
Roman,
Yes.
Mayor Kempin.
Yes.
Thanks, I was hoping that would go fast with keep listening to the work session first.
All right, next, and thank you, by the way, for listening to the meeting and everything ahead of time. I appreciate that very much. Next is reports, discussion items and announcements. First is town manager's report, Carlos.
Nothing immediately comes to mind to add.
Any questions for Carlos?
With the approval tonight of the homestead agreements, we are scheduled to close and transfer the property to Joel tomorrow.
We are gonna have electronic recycling on site. Should we plan
Big question for Rebecca.
You're getting
Did
better.
I say that in my report?
it?
But what I did was copy and paste what she sent to the
Oh, okay.
staff, so if it says that, then yes.
It requires a $5 donation to see standalone. as-
Oh, electronics recycling,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, what did I say?
You said what?
It's probably, I heard electric recycling and I was like,
Oh, maybe that, I don't know.
Yeah, she did say she was gonna see sustainability to come up to it.
Cool. That's great.
If I would have known that like a month ago, I would have taken my town hall electronics instead of storing it in my garage for a month and a half.
You know, another thing, I don't know if it's too late in the game for town cleanup, but, another thing that I found really difficult to get done around here is oil recycling. Like I changed the oil in my snow blower myself, and then I got this oil, and then trying to find something to do with it is pretty tough in Gunnison County.
yeah, I think that falls under BOPA. I can't remember what that stands for, but the county does a annual BOPA event for those types of disposals that the town has historically contributed to.
Yeah.
I can find out if they're doing that again, when they got their hands full with Highway 50.
Well, I usually have to support it in Creek, but.
Well, that's what they put the oil recess at the four-way for. That big hole is. I read that in the mobility plan.
Only the ones with the pictures of the fish.
Hey, you don't.
I think that's great.
That's, you know, I'm taking my usual down there.
You might, talk to me outside of the meeting about that too.
About oil? Okay.
And the only other thing I'd add, I just mentioned, we did replace the 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 lights there, trying to get it a little bit brighter
Yeah, nice.
for you guys, so
I-
hopefully.
Now that you mentioned it, I noticed it. I mean, I didn't notice it being mentioned, but yeah.
Roman mentioned it to me, and I was thinking, after he said that, I was like, is that why I'm having trouble seeing? I thought it was me, so to have someone else. So I just asked them to replace them, just because they hadn't been replaced in a very long
That's
time.
nice. Flickery, but it's brighter.
And I thought we all got age. Wow.
Yeah, it's like, wow, you're really.
Yeah, am I getting old or?
Reapply my foundation before my meetings.
Yeah.
All right, Tiffany?
Will everyone be here at the next meeting?
Yes. I will, but I'm gonna be out of town for the cleanup and the second meeting in June.
Second meeting in June?
Yeah.
And also, I will not be here at the next meeting. I will be at the International Institute of Municipal Clerks Conference in Calgary. Yeah, that'll be very fun. Heidi will be covering for me. She's never really even attended a council meeting other than what she did before, so please be gentle on her. Please, state your motions slowly so she can grab them, because I told her that was one of the most important parts.
Can I throw something out there? Can we avoid a work session at the next meeting and just do a 6 o'clock start?
There's one.
Um,
Do we have another
No.
work session?
Janet has one tentatively on the agenda for the EV plan.
Oh, cool.
I can tell her you all said no, and we gotta push it to the next meeting.
No, if nobody else, I just,
The second meeting in June.
yeah.
I will encourage her.
Yeah, sometimes work sessions just, you know, there's challenges with work that it creates sometimes. It'd be nice to.
And one thing that coincided with my report and Tiffany's report is if you going, I mentioned going to CML. If you plan on going, I'd set the registration, but if you need a combination, just give it to Tiffany and she can make those.
I can
A
try.
combo being
Always the weekend.
room and,
It's ridiculous. Well, I tried to figure out how.
Well, you'll need to register yourself. I sent the link in my
I
report.
did that.
But for your hotel accommodation, Tiffany can arrange
Do you want me
for it.
send me an email with the date?
Well, no, it
At
only
this
do one,
point,
it would
you
only
might
do one
not be
show,
at the
right?
host hotel.
Probably.
Well,
I.
good and
not
bad,
able
only one show. We
to
don't
be
do the
in
Friday show, right?
hotel.
Move to adjourn Thursday, they're opening for the Stone said.
Well,
So.
I might be able to get to a room, I sent
Why
an
is it
email.
bad?
Oh, is that what they're telling?
I thought this was a joke, because it's
Tell
just
me the exact
a poster and
date.
then it's sponsored.
Send
by-
me an email.
Is.
Email me exact date.
Yeah, like the titles.
No, they're not dumb. Well, you only do lunch break, and you blast background sound.
Yeah, the 20.
I'm
We need to, there's still a meeting.
All right, we're adjourned.
There it is.
Apparently you are.
Thanks, Jerry.
No, save it for next time.
Good to see you, folks.
Okay, Jerry.
Yep.
Hey. Wayne, have you?